Part 20. Fringe Artists in the Entertainment Industry. Author, Chizuda Xiaomao. Chapter 196. Chapter 192-190. Suffocation of Happiness. Under the gray sky, the air pressure was so low that it made people breathless. After Li Dabai followed Chen Lian out of the CCTV building, she was still in a state of shock. Just when she went to deliver the film, she realized that her boss spent more than 20 million yuan to buy a 5-second advertisement. What is the concept of more than 4 million per second? Li Dabai calculated the salary Fa paid himself and realized that he could never compare to CCTV's salary in 1 second. Teacher Chen, this is too exaggerated, Li Dabai said with some doubts about life. Chen Lian looked at Li Dabai, who had never seen the world, and said, 20 million is nothing. The standard is more than 60 million, and next year it will probably be hundreds of millions. Li Dabai was completely silent. In this era, such a number was out of reach in the eyes of a girl under 20. Not to mention Li Dabai was frightened, even Chen Miran was frightened. After Chen Lian asked Li Dabai to send him to Chen Miran, he told her about it. Chen Miran counted on her fingers how many TV dramas she would have to invest in to earn back the more than 20 million yuan. Prime Minister Luluakio was broadcast after New Year's Day as the opening drama. Now he is a household name and has broken the ratings. Not counting Wan Wan CTV, which has not yet been discussed, the second round broadcast rights in the mainland alone have been sold for more than 10 million, and Chen Miran has already received 2 million in return. But compared with the 23 million from advertising, the money he earned was only a fraction, and the most important thing was Chen Lian's money. While Chen Miran was shocked, she also thought of a question. With more than 20 million yuan in advertising, how much money could Chen Lian and his uncle's factory make in a year? It must be hundreds of millions. Didn't Chen Lian tell her to invest casually? Is this called casual investment? Then Chen Lian is a billionaire? Chen Miran suddenly raised her head and looked at Chen Lian. The emotions in her eyes gradually changed from shock to excitement to determination to move forward, and finally turned into tenderness and sweetness. Chen Lian's scalp was numb when he saw Beauty Chen. He really admired that Beauty Chen could change so many emotions in 3 seconds. If she was acting, she wouldn't be a god. Husband Chen Miran sat on Chen Lian, hugged his neck and said coquettishly, I want it. Chen Lian couldn't help but shudder when Beauty Chen called her husband. She had only called her husband in bed before, but now she couldn't help but attack him. Chen Lian swallowed and said, What, it's broad daylight now, and besides, you'd better call me Lian. I'm more used to it. No, I want it, husband. Chen Miran sat on Chen Lian and rubbed it a few more times, water dripping from her beautiful eyes. When Chen Lian saw Beauty Chen like this, he simply didn't care and just hugged her and walked to the bedroom. It is said that money and power are the best aphrodisiacs for men, and they are also the best aphrodisiac for women. After Chen Lian had been obsessed with her all afternoon, Chen Miran lay on top of him and asked, Honey, you are so rich and you still told me that you have no money. If I had known, I would have bought you that Mercedes-Benz worth over 1 million yuan. Listening to Chen Miran saying husband, Chen Lian felt extremely awkward, but after telling her not to change, Chen Lian could only let it go. He smiled bitterly and said, I really have no money, let alone a Mercedes-Benz worth more than 1 million, I only have more than 40,000 yuan, so I can only buy a second-hand van, and it has to be an accident vehicle. Looking at Chen Lian's serious expression, Chen Miran suddenly figured out in a flash of her mind that more than 20 million yuan had been spent on advertising. It was normal to have no money, but she had money, so she turned over and dug out the bottom of the bedside table. Passbook. Husband, now we still have more than 2 million, which we earned from investing in TV series. Chen Miran put the bank book in Chen Lian's hand and said proudly, Husband, take it to buy a car. You can buy 2 cars. Chen Lian picked up the bank book and flipped it over, then threw it to Chen Myron and said, "You can keep it. The company is not a one-time deal. Keep it and continue investing in TV series. By the way, you can meet John Quilai later and ask him if he has any ideas. If we make our own TV series, we can invest in it." "John Quilai?" Chen Myron asked curiously, holding the bank book in her hand and fanning it twice. "Why do you need to ask him?" Chen Lian sat up with his hands and said, "I think he is a person with ideas. You can ask. Now that Luluakio is popular, maybe he will have ideas." "Then why don't you ask Li Bao?" "Oh, Mr. Li's character won't do such a thing." Chen Myron nodded in approval, then thought of another possibility, and said to Chen Lian, "Then why don't we make a TV series ourselves? Woolen cloth. It is too difficult to do it yourself. Whether it is funds or connections, Chen Lian and Chen Myron are inherently deficient. It is easy to make a TV series, but it is not that simple to sell it. Why should the TV station buy your film? There are so many TV series produced every year, but you should never say that your film is good. Who sells films and doesn't say so? I know who you are. What? Do you really want to sell? It's not impossible. It's not easy to watch you. I want 5,000 yuan per episode. This is the result of having no connections and no strength. Chen Lian and Chen Myron still lack a lot. Chen Lian looked at the ambitious Chen Myron and said, "I don't have the strength or the connections. If you invest now, you can take advantage of this opportunity to accumulate more contacts in the TV station and gain some experience." Chen Myron nodded obediently. She now discovered that although Chen Lian was too lazy to take care of things, he made no mistakes in every decision he made. Chen Myron knew how Chen Lian made his fortune. The money he made from art was not included. She knew that Chen Lian had made millions by investing in Hong Kong before. After investing in a VCD factory, he could now spend tens of millions on advertising, allowing himself to investing in Luluakio also sold for a sky-high price. With such an investment vision, Chen Myron would naturally not doubt it, and decided to do whatever Chen Lian asked her to do in the future. There is one exception. You must work hard to conceive a child. Otherwise, Chen Lian's billions of assets would all be spent on other women. This is absolutely not okay. This is my son's. Myron Chen's determination was so firm that she pierced a few more holes in the small umbrella at home while Chen Lian was taking a bath. The new year is coming soon, and the capital has become quiet, but the familiar pigeon whistle still sounds over the capital every morning. In TV dramas, whenever there are aerial shots of alleys in the capital, there will be this sound. It has almost become as synonymous with the capital as the courtyard houses. You can hear this sound whenever you walk in the alleys of the capital. It is a unique symphony of the capital. In the past few days, Chen Lian has been kept in her yard by Myron Chen in various ways. She is simply an annoying little goblin who is very good at rubbing people. But I can't leave today. I have to pack up and go home for the new year. It's been months since I went back to Zushikao. Chen Lian bought a bunch of New Year's goods and went back. You can't spend the new year alone. Chen Lian came to the alley and saw the same scene as last year. He couldn't help but run and buy a bunch of firecrackers. However, before he could fight the children in the alley for 300 rounds, he was surrounded by all the people who came back from outside. The uncle was taken away. In Chen Lian's cabin, Uncle Chi was not in a good mood while smoking. Chen Lian knew that Uncle Chi would go to the prison to visit his son at this time every year. Chen Lian couldn't help but sigh when he thought of his senior brother, who would have to stay there for another 2 years. Uncle Chi smoked his dry cigarette, and after a while he said, "Bai Qing didn't come here this year. Chen Lian, I'm going back to my hometown. I left some time ago." Uncle Chi was silent for a while and said, "You are already old now. It's almost time to consider getting married. That girl Bai Qing is nice. She even came here to give you something on New Year's Day. Yes, she is a good girl, Chen Lian responded, but still did not answer the question of marriage. Uncle Chi knocked the cigarette in his hand on the ground a few times and said, "You have an idea. I won't talk about you anymore. Don't let down this good girl." Chen Lian nodded, and then he was shocked to realize that he was at an age where he was being urged to get married. It's so early to get married these days. It's so common to get married in your early 20s. It's not like the age to get married is later to be in your late 20s or late 20s. This year's New Year is still very lively, but not as lively as last year. Maybe it's because there is one less person. Chen Lian left on the 5th day of the New Year. If we stay any longer, the ant in the courtyard will bring the girl to Chen Lian's house for a blind date. Chen Lian had just arrived home, and before he had even cleaned up, there was a knock on the door and Li Dabai's voice came from outside. "Teacher Chen. Are you at home? I'm here to wish you a happy new year." Chen Lian looked at the rag in his hand, threw it on the table and ran to open the door. "Come in," Chen Lian enthusiastically welcomed Li Dabai in. Facing Chen Lian, who was suddenly so enthusiastic, Li Dabai was still a little unaccustomed. He put the gift in his hand on the table and said with a smile, "Happy New Year, Mr. Chen." "Happy New Year, have you had a good year?" Chen Lian asked with a smile. Li Dabai nodded and said, "It's not bad, it would be nice if he still had the lucky money." As if he had read Li Dabai's thoughts, Chen Lian went to the room, put a red envelope and handed it to her and said, "The New Year's money I gave you, I can't let you call me Teacher Chen so many times in vain." "For me," Li Dabai looked at the red envelope in Chen Lian's hand in surprise, took it and said with a smile, "Thank you, Teacher Chen. You are the only one who gave me lucky money this year." Chen Lian smiled and looked at Li Dabai and said, "Is Teacher Chen nice to you?" "Good. Teacher Chen, I need your help." "Can you help me?" "Help? Okay. You are indeed a good comrade." Chen Lian picked up the rag on the table and put it in Li Dabai's hand and said, "Then I'll leave the cleaning to you." Li Dabai. Looking at the dull Li Dabai, Chen Lian reached out and patted her shoulder and said, "Do a good job. I'll go buy groceries and stay for lunch." Li Dabai couldn't help but ask, "Do you still want me to cook it?" "Then don't buy the fish, I won't cook it." "Huh." Chen Lian turned to look at Li Dabai and said, "Dabai, you have become smarter, you are very proactive, not bad." "Then I won't buy fish. I am very smart." Li Dabai made a face at Chen Lian's back. Chen Lian, who came back from shopping for groceries, couldn't help but sigh that it would be better to have an assistant. "Look how clean this room is." "Dabai did a good job," Chen Lian shouted to Li Dabai, who was cooking in the kitchen. The only response to Chen Lian was the sound of chopping ribs. It was obvious that Li Dabai was not in a good mood. Li Dabai's face turned red while he was chopping the ribs vigorously. While chopping the ribs, he muttered in a low voice, "Teacher Chen is so perverted. How could you take a photo like that? And with so many women, they are all celebrities. But Teacher Chen's photos are beautiful. He is indeed an artist. Did I misunderstand Teacher Chen? That's human body art. Yeah. That must be it. That's art." After Li Dabai re-established his three views, he breathed out gently, put a smile on his face again, and began to cook seriously. Li Dabai, who was feeling like a roller coaster, suddenly realized that his idol was different from what he thought. As an assistant, he would be under a lot of pressure in the future. What if Teacher Chen asks me to be a mannequin for him? Do you want to agree? If you don't agree, will you be fired? Chen Lian picked up a piece of ribs, looked at the distracted Li Dabai and asked, "What are you thinking about? Why don't you eat it?" "It's nothing," Li Dabai whispered back while grabbing the rice. When Chen Lian looked at Li Dabai like this, he thought she was unhappy because she was working for him, and thought that he should not let her do housework for him in the future. She is an assistant, not a nanny. After lunch, Li Dabai cleaned up, said hello to Chen Lian and ran away, fearing that Chen Lian would ask her to be a mannequin in the next second. Little girls always have inexplicable imaginations. Chen Lian couldn't imagine what Li Dabai was thinking, so he just thought she was afraid that he would let her work. The Chinese New Year is over, and Chen Lian's vacation is over, and it's time to start work. He also has inspiration for things he had never figured out about his previous sculptures. Made now just in time for filming in March. When he came to the studio, Chen Lian met Bo Cheng. Bai Qing came back from his hometown in the 6th grade of junior high school, but he didn't seem to be in a good mood after he came back. He was probably urged to get married like Chen Lian. Chen Lian didn't ask about the specific situation. Bai Qing would tell him if he wanted to. If he didn't want to, there was no point in asking. The two people were sitting side by side in the studio. In front of Chen Lian was a newly formed human sculpture, and Bo Qing was sitting next to him painting. Behind them, Li Dabai, who was doing nothing, looked at their backs and couldn't help feeling envious. It's a really good match. Li Dabai looked at them with his chin propped up, wondering why these two people were not together, even though they were so suitable and had such a tacit understanding. Isn't it said that lovers will eventually get married? I really don't understand what the artist is thinking. Even a sculpture has a weird shape. You might say it is a human being, and it is extremely twisted. You might say it is not a human being. It has hands and feet, but why are its feet made of knives? It seems so strange. Li Dabai feels that his artistic accomplishment needs to be improved. Let alone creation, it is difficult to understand. It's not easy to be an artist's assistant. Li Dabai looked through the art history book he bought boredly, trying to make himself worthy of the job of an artist's assistant. Otherwise, if you go out with Teacher Chen in the future, you will not understand anything they talk about, which will be very embarrassing. Chen Lian and Bai Qing worked in the studio for many days, and the sculpture was not completed until the school started. Teacher Chen, do you want to go to school today? School has started. Li Dabai ran over and asked. Chen Lian put down the carving knife in his hand, casually picked up the rag next to him and wiped his hands and said, "Go, wait for me outside, I'll wash my hands and go out." Oh well. After Li Dabai went out, Chen Lian looked at Bo Qing's painting next to him and said, "Your painting is a bit depressing." Bai Qing's painting may depict his family's New Year's Eve dinner, with a family of 3 sitting at the table. However, the side of the daughter near the father is bright and full of laughter, but the side near the mother is particularly depressing, as if the daughter can't breathe. The 3 people formed a strange circle. The part between mother and father was extremely ordinary and peaceful, like 2 strangers. Bai Qing said without raising his head, "I just paint casually, and I need to vent my inner emotions." Tisk, I really want to have a meal at your house and experience it. Chen Lian couldn't help but said. Bai Qing looked back at him and said calmly, "Okay, I'll take you back next time and let you feel what it means to be suffocated by happiness." Chen Lian, but the suffocation of happiness is so appropriate. It was the same feeling when I was besieged by the ants in the courtyard and wanted to go on a blind date. However, Chen Lian became more and more curious about Bo Qing's mother. What kind of god could force Bo Qing to be like this? Be sure to try it out if you have the chance in the future. On the way to Nortel, Li Dabai peeked at Chen Lian several times and finally couldn't help but asked, "Teacher Chen, why aren't you and Sister Bai Qing together?" Chen Lian didn't answer Li Dabai and just said calmly, "Drive well and stay out of adults' affairs." Who do you think is young? Li Dabai snorted unconvinced, "I've grown up again after the new year, okay." Teacher Chen is not careful at all. Bang. I don't know if the car hit a brick, and it jolted violently. From the corner of his eye, Chen Lian accidentally caught sight of Li Dabai, who was shaking up and down. He couldn't help but mutter in his heart, there was only a wrong name. What a nickname. I wonder if there will be a suffocating feeling coming over my face. I'm curious. Chen Lian felt that his experience was so lacking that he had never even experienced the feeling of suffocation that came over him. Teacher Chen, after the car arrived at the entrance of Nortel, Li Dabai parked the car and looked at Chen Lian, who was in a daze, and shouted, "Teacher Chen, we are already here." "Oh, then you go back first. You don't need to pick me up tonight." Chen Lian came to his senses, opened the door and got out of the car. After Chen Lian got off the bus, Li Dabai looked down, his face turned slightly red, and he couldn't help but muttered, "Teacher Chen is indeed a pervert. It's already 10,000 words. My coding is getting slower and slower. I always want to be lazy. Alas, I should uninstall the game and TikTok and become a ruthless coding machine." Fringe artists in the entertainment industry. Author, Chizu de Xiaomao. Chapter 197. Chapter 193-191. I am not an actor, I am a financial sponsor. Happy New Year. When Chen Lian walks in the school, the most common words he hears are Happy New Year. Without Gong 11 Fa Cai, college students still lack social experience. What's so happy about the new year? Obviously the most important thing is to wish you good luck. Do not move. Chen Lian suddenly felt something pressing against his lower back, accompanied by a faint fragrance. "Su Jinglei, you are boring." Su Jinglei retracted her hand, ran out from behind Chen Lian with a smile on her face and said with a smile, "Can you hear this? Your perfume betrayed you." Chen Lian curled his lips and said. Su Jinglei smiled even happier. Her eyes were as crescent-shaped as she walked in front of Chen Lian and danced in small steps and said, "I didn't expect you to be quite attentive. I have only used this perfume twice. I'm just sensitive to smells." Chen Lian looked at Su Jinglei's hair blown by the wind and asked curiously, "You are already a junior, why do you still come to class every day? You're not graduating in your junior year, so how could you not come?" Su Jinglei slowed down and walked side by side with Chen Lian and said, "And I was in the director's class recently." Director's class? Chen Lian was stunned for a moment and suddenly said, "I forgot, you have already started to be a director." Su Jinglei blinked and said without any concealment, "It's just in name. I can only shout start and ka now. That's not bad. I only listen to people shouting start and click." Chen Lian made a joke, then remembered the film group in the director's class, and asked Su Jinglei, "Is there someone named Jiazank in the director's class, formed an electronic music group and made a short film? Do you know him?" "He is from the literature department, not the directing department." Su Jinglei thought for a moment and said, "I know the short film you mentioned. I heard it won an award." Chen Lian nodded and said, "Help me introduce him someday. I'm quite interested in him. I'm not familiar with him either." "I'll ask you later, why are you interested in him?" Su Jinglei looked at Chen Lian and joked, "I thought you were only interested in girls." Chen Lian glanced at Su Jinglei and said, "Aren't you also messing with me? The new year has begun, do you still remember?" Su Jinglei said half jokingly and half apologizing, "At worst, I will make it up to you." Chen Lian waved his hand and said, "There is no need for compensation. Just don't deliberately cause trouble in the future. I think I still have to make up for it, just tonight. I'll treat you to dinner," Su Jinglei said, quickening her pace and running away without giving Chen Lian a chance to refuse. "If you invite me to dinner, I will go." Chen Lian shook his head and walked towards his classroom. Entering the classroom, Chen Lian found that no one had come to the classroom yet. They were probably all in the dormitory. Chen Lian found a seat and sat down, waiting for the first class of the new semester. Running away after this class can be regarded as giving Teacher Li some face. I can wait until my junior year and stop coming to school to order Mao. After a while, Chen Zihan rushed into the classroom in a hurry. When he saw Chen Lian sitting in the corner in a daze, he immediately ran over. Fortunately, the classroom where the performance was performed was an empty stage with tables, chairs, and benches attached to the corners of the walls. Otherwise, Chen Zihan would have fallen if he ran so fast. There was no one in the classroom now. Chen Zihan ran to Chen Lian without thinking, hugged his arm and said, "I knew you were alone in the classroom." Chen Lian raised his eyebrows and asked, "Did you see it in the dormitory?" "Yeah," Chen Zihan nodded, and then said angrily, "I saw you and Su Jinglei coming in together. Last time she deliberately made things difficult, and you still talked to her." Chen Zihan probably ran so fast because he saw Chen Lian and Su Jinglei walking together. Chen Lian explained, "She just apologized, and she won't embarrass you next time." Chen Zihan pursed his lips and said, "Then why doesn't she apologize to me? She just wants to take the opportunity to get close to you." Seeing Chen Zihan's energetic look, which looked a bit like Li Dabai, but a little smaller in stature, Chen Lian couldn't help pinching her face and said, "Don't be angry, I brought you a New Year gift." Chen Lian said as he took out a small box from his pocket and handed it to Chen Zihan. Chen Zihan opened it and saw that it was a necklace, and immediately said happily, "Then help me put it on." Chen Lian picked up the necklace and walked around behind Chen Zihan, looked at her thin swan neck, and put the necklace on her. "Does it look good?" Chen Zihan turned around and looked at Chen Lian, holding down his collar to reveal the necklace and asked. Chen Lian looked at the white necklace and nodded, "It looks good." "Damn." Chen Zihan hugged Chen Lian's neck and kissed him. Zhang Qingqing, who had just arrived at the classroom door, was stunned when she saw this scene. She didn't know whether she should go in or exit, feeling embarrassed and angry. A couple of dogs and men. Chen Lian noticed Zhang Qingqing at the door, patted Chen Zihan lightly and said, "Okay, let go first, someone is coming." "Who?" Chen Zihan immediately let go of Chen Lian and looked back. When he realized it was Zhang Qingqing, he snorted and turned back to hug Chen Lian and kiss him. "Chen Lian, why are some people so excited? Do you have a hobby in this area?" Zhang Qingqing was so angry that her teeth were itching. She knew that Chen Zihan had done this on purpose to show her, "If you kiss me, just kiss me, what's going on with that villain's worthy expression? I really thought you were better than me at grabbing a man." Zhang Qingqing originally wanted to go out first to avoid embarrassment, but now she won't leave. Wouldn't leaving make Chen Zihan think that she is afraid? Zhang Qingqing walked in with a cold face and deliberately sat down not far or near from them. Chen Zihan hesitated and let go of Chen Lian. He still knew the importance. Seeing these two unresponsive girls, Chen Lian yawned out of boredom. It was not as good as the palace fight drama. After Zhang Qingqing arrived, the remaining people also came one after another. Not long after everyone arrived, Li Qiji also came. In the first class of the new semester, the class teacher must be the one giving the speech. Li Qiji saw that Chen Lian had also arrived on time and nodded with satisfaction. This time it was very honorable. However, this face was only given for half a day. Chen Lian ran away with Chen Zihan after finishing a class. Li Qiji, who originally wanted to talk to Chen Lian, was angry for a long time. Also angry was Su Jinglei. She came to see Chen Lian as soon as get out of class was over, but it was a pity that she was in vain. At the door of the classroom, Zhang Qingqing looked at Su Jinglei, who was thrown into the air, and a flash of schadenfreude flashed in her heart. Although she and Chen Zihan didn't deal with each other, she didn't deal with Su Jinglei even more. Su Jinglei noticed Zhang Qingqing's schadenfreude and snorted and said, "It doesn't feel good to be betrayed by your best friend. She's still the star of the class." Zhang Qingqing looked at Su Jinglei's leaving figure and felt that she had been severely laughed at. However, there was still a trace of reason in her brain. She comforted herself by thinking that she had never said that she liked Chen Lian, nor was she actively pursuing Chen Lian and being rejected. "What are you so angry about? If you're not angry, just pretend that you don't have that best friend anymore." I also want to find a boyfriend who is even better than me. I have to compare you. Who to look for? Jiang Qingqing thought about it in her mind for a long time, and finally discovered that none of her peers around her were better than Chen Lian. The people who are more powerful than Chen Lian are all old men in their decades. If you really find an old man, you will be laughed at by Chen Zihan and Su Jinglei for the rest of your life. My damn desire to win. What should I do? I can't swallow this breath. At night, Chen Zihan leaned on Chen Lian, twirling the necklace around his neck with his slender fingers, and rubbing his straight calves against Chen Lian. Chen Lian looked at Chen Zihan's slightly too thin calves and wondered if this girl usually skipped meals and maintained her figure too well. However, after subconsciously squeezing her hands, she rejected this idea. How can you feel like this without eating? He is extremely talented, just a little bit behind Li Dabai, but Chen Zihan's legs are better. What are you thinking about? Chen Zihan looked at Chen Lian with a red face. Chen Lian shook his head and said, "It's nothing. By the way, have you received any roles this year?" No. Chen Zihan shook his head, looked at Chen Lian and asked, "What about you? Will you still film in the future?" "Yes, there are 2 movies in the first half of the year." Chen Lian patted Chen Zihan and said, "I'll help you ask if there are any TV dramas looking for actors recently." Chen Zihan blushed and said, "Well, but can you pat it a little gentler? I couldn't hold it back for a while, but it felt really good, and the rebound was very strong, just like a wave." Chen Lian, who doesn't have to go to school every day, also took the time to complete his sculpture. The prototype of the sculpture is the prototype of the male protagonist of the winner, but Chen Lian replaced the prosthetic legs with legs made of sharp knives. The shape of the sculpture is a running posture. Looking at the prosthetic leg made of sharp knife tips, one can feel the piercing pain. The overall shape is not realistic, and the image of the character is somewhat distorted, like a ball of fire. Abstract hands emerge from the base of the sculpture and pull on the figure's healthy legs. "Dabai, what do you think of this sculpture?" Chen Lian turned to look at Li Dabai and asked. Li Dabai looked at it for a long time before he said, "It's a very strong pain, no, it's a very strong belief and unyielding spirit." "Not bad, Dabai, you have made great progress." Chen Lian was also very satisfied with this work. He looked at Li Dabai and asked, "Have you bought a ticket to Shanghai?" Speaking of business, Li Dabai also became serious and immediately replied, "I bought the air ticket for the day after tomorrow and called the hotel to make a reservation." "But Teacher Chen, you really don't need me to accompany you." Chen Lian shook his head and said, "No, you can help me look after the studio in the capital. The studio cannot be empty. Bai Qing went out to relax 2 days ago and went to Xi'an alone. People come to visit the studio from time to time, and he can't live without people." Li Dabai let out a disappointed sound, and then muttered, "Why don't you hire someone else? I'm an assistant, not a security guard." Listening to Li Dabai's complaints, Chen Lian knocked her on the head and said, "It's not good for you to be lazy in the capital. If you find it troublesome, just recruit someone yourself." "Really? Then can I go with you? Next time, I'm going to sign the contract this time. I'll be back soon." On the plane flying to Shanghai 2 days later, Mr. Zhou took the script of Red River Valley and read it for a while and said to Chen Lian, "If I had known I was going to Shanghai again, I would not have driven back to the capital by myself. I am tired after working for several months. Kill me. Have a good rest for 2 days when you get to Shanghai." Chen Lian looked at Mr. Zhou, whom he hadn't seen for a long time, and said with a smile, "You and Shanghai are quite destined." Several movies were shot in Shanghai. Mr. Zhou couldn't help but nodded and said, "It seems to be true. You tell me whether I want to go directly to Shanghai to develop." "Forget it, Shanghai Film Studio is getting worse every year." Chen Lian couldn't help but said, "Just stay in the capital." Mr. Zhou smiled and closed the script, put his arm around Chen Lian and said, You just can't bear to leave me and you want to keep me for the rest of your life, right? Chen Lian couldn't find anything to rebut. He looked at the script in Mr. Zhou's hand and changed the subject. Read the script carefully. The movie Red River Valley is different from the ones you have made before. If you can act well, your future career will be better. It's open. Well, don't worry, I'm acting in my true colors. You should just worry about yourself, Mr. Zhou said seriously. Chen Lian always felt that Mr. Zhou was mocking her. This time she went to Shanghai to win the second female lead in Red River Valley, who was also the love interest of Chen Lian's character in the movie. In the movie, the male protagonist only loves the second female lead. The princess played by Ning Jing pursues the male protagonist, but the male protagonist is not tempted at all and only loves the second female lead. Mr. Zhou said that he was acting in his true colors and there was nothing wrong with it, which made Chen Lian worried that there was nothing wrong with him. A scumbag playing a pure love warrior had to rely on his acting skills. It was difficult to embody the emotions of the character. It's just that Chen Lian is not sure whether the money he invested can be exchanged for the second female lead. If it doesn't work, he can add more. He promised Mr. Zhou to introduce the role to her before, and as a man, you can't break your promise. Moreover, this movie has a good reputation and has won many awards. It will gild the resume of the newcomer Zhou Gongzi. With his acting skills, Zhou Gongzi may win the Best Supporting Actress. If he really wins the award, Mr. Zhou's future will be much easier. Chen Lian turned his head and glanced at Mr. Zhou, who was carefully pondering the script, with a smile on his lips, as if he could see her acting skills in this movie crushing Ning Jing. The current Mr. Zhou should be able to do it. Maybe he might have a chance. The plane landed in Shanghai soon. Chen Lian and Mr. Zhou did not go directly to the Shanghai film studio to meet Feng Xiaoning, but met Ning Jing first at the International Hotel. In the luxuriously decorated hotel restaurant, Ning Jing looked at the little Mr. Zhou clinging to Chen Lian and couldn't help but say, "She is really suitable." Chen Lian smiled and said, "I feel like this role was tailor-made for her." Mr. Zhou smiled sheepishly, looked at Ning Jing and said, "I particularly like your movie. I watched Sunny Day several times." Ning Jing now thinks of Zhang Wen when she hears others mention Sunny Days. A hint of gloom flashes in her eyes, she smiles and says, "Thank you." Chen Lian noticed Ning Jing's emotions and changed the topic and asked, "The role of Shuer hasn't been decided yet, right?" No. Ning Jing shook her head and said, "The funds in the factory haven't been secured yet, and it hasn't been officially decided yet." "There is a chance." Chen Lian nodded and asked, "Is Feng Xiaoning easy to talk to?" "It's so-so, but you are an investor and he will give you face." Ning Jing took a sip of water and said, "If it doesn't work, you can invest more. He is very short of money." After hearing this, Mr. Zhou couldn't help but grab Chen Lian's arm and said in a low voice, "I'm confident, there's no need to spend more money." Chen Lian looked at Mr. Zhou and smiled, without saying anything. Sometimes it doesn't matter if you have confidence or if you are suitable for the role. Chen Lian and Feng Xiaoning had some unpleasant experiences before because of the avalanche scene. Who knows if Feng Xiaoning will keep it in mind and be deliberately difficult on this matter. After dinner, Chen Lian asked Mr. Zhou to go to his room to rest and prepare for tomorrow's audition, while he and Ning Jing went to meet Feng Xiaoning. Chen Lian met Feng Xiaoning at the Shanghai film studio. After the meeting, Chen Lian said straight to the point, "Director Feng, I want to have another role. I can add more if you still need more investment." Feng Xiaoning was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect Chen Lian to be so direct that he looked like one of those wealthy nouveau riche rather than an artist. Ning Jing added next to her, "Director Feng should also know this actor. She was the one who played the role of the little wife that was filmed in the factory some time ago." Starring in The Little Wife? Feng Xiaoning knew about this movie. The factory made several movies throughout the year. He also went to see this movie and was quite impressed by the heroine. Feng Xiaoning pondered for a while and looked at Chen Lian and said, "Young Master Zhou, right? I know her, and her acting skills are indeed good, but I already have a favorite actor for this role." Chen Lian said with a smile, "Mr. Zhou's acting skills are good, and he is a very spiritual actor. Director Feng can consider it. All investment matters are easy to discuss." Feng Xiaoning was a little embarrassed. He was indeed short of money, but he had never met Mr. Zhou, and he didn't know if it was suitable. He couldn't compromise casually. Seeing Feng Xiaoning's embarrassed look, Chen Lian said directly, "Director Feng, let's do this. I will bring her to audition tomorrow. If you really feel that it is inappropriate, just pretend that I never said anything about it, and I will make the original investment normal cast." Chen Lian gave Feng Xiaoning a step down, otherwise it would seem that he was penetrated by money and his psychological defense was broken. Although the final result is likely to be like this, on the surface, he still needs to work hard. The reason why Chen Lian talked about money with Feng Xiaoning straight to the point was to tell Feng Xiaoning that he was not an actor but a financier. He could meet his financial needs and change their status from unequal to equal at the beginning. Chen Lian didn't want to have friction with Feng Xiaoning during the filming process, otherwise he was just an actor and couldn't stand up to a director. Sometimes the pursuit of film art is far less effective than money, especially for a director who has been short of money to invest for several years. Feng Xiaoning thought for a while and said, "Okay, let's see what happens tomorrow. I hope she can give me a surprise." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fringe artists in the entertainment industry. Author, Chizu de Xiaomao. Chapter 198. Chapter 194-192. You are a good person. The early morning in Shanghai is very different from that in Beijing. There are two completely different styles, one in the south and one in the north. The air in the alluring city of Shanghai is filled with moist water vapor, which has a different kind of tenderness. But when I came to the streets, the gentleness disappeared and turned into a fashionable and foreign style. Different from the tradition of the capital, this place is more refined. After Chen Lian dropped Mr. Zhou off at the gate of Shanghai Film Studio, he planned to leave. The result of the audition was already determined yesterday. Mr. Zhou's acting skills are not bad and they fit the role very well. Coupled with Chen Lian's money offensive, I really can't think of the reason why Feng Xiaoning would refuse. "You won't go with me?" Mr. Zhou looked at Chen Lian nervously. Chen Lian smiled and said, "It's not your first time here at Shanghai Film Studio. Just have Ningjing accompany you. I'm going to meet an old friend. She's going abroad soon. Okay, after the audition, go back to the hotel and wait for you." Mr. Zhou took a deep breath, turned around and entered the gate of Shanghai Film Studio. This audition was different from the previous ones. Mr. Zhou was determined to win. Not to mention that this was the opportunity Chen Lian found for herself. Even if it was just to have Chen Lian's love exclusively in the movie, it was worth her efforts. There is nothing wrong with having dreams that cannot be realized in life be reflected once in a movie. After Mr. Zhou entered, Chen Lian stopped a car and went to the Shanghai Grand Theater. "I haven't seen Teacher Zhou for a long time, so I went to find Teacher Zhou to make up for my lessons. In the past few months, except for dancing with Sophie Marceau a few times, Chen Lian had not practiced much, so his skills were a bit rusty." Chen Lian met Mr. Zhou at the entrance of the Shanghai Grand Theater. The curly hair that Mr. Zhou permed specially for filming was gone and became long and straight black. However, the amorous feelings on his body did not disappear, but added a touch of urban beauty. Teacher Zhou saw a smile on Chen Lian's face, but he felt a little unfamiliar. After all, they hadn't seen each other for several months, and they needed a little time or a dance to get familiar with each other again. In Joji's own dance practice room next to the Grand Theater, exciting music rang in the room, and Chen Lian, who put on his training clothes, immediately made a standard starting position. Joji immediately joined her, and the two of them danced in harmony with each other in the huge dance studio, following the rhythm of the music. After the song ended, Joji leaned against Chen Lian's chest and looked into his eyes while panting slightly. The previous unfamiliarity had disappeared, as if she had returned to that afternoon last year, and the charming atmosphere lingered between the two. When the music started playing again, the curtains of the dance practice room suddenly fell, and the closed door made a locking sound. In the quiet corridor, only the passionate music and inaudible breathing could be heard coming from inside. At this time in the Shanghai film studio, young Master Zhou had finished his audition. However, Feng Xiaoning, who was sitting opposite him, did not immediately tell young Master Zhou the answer. He pondered for a moment and said, "You performed very well and are very suitable for this role, but I need to think about it and will give you an answer tomorrow." Mr. Zhou felt a little disappointed when she heard this, but she was very confident in her performance today. She bowed slightly to Feng Xiaoning and said thank you before leaving. Ning Jing glanced at Feng Xiaoning and knew what he meant. If you don't see a rabbit, don't let go of the eagle, so she followed him out. Wait a minute, Ning Jing chased Mr. Zhou behind and said, don't be discouraged. Director Feng is very optimistic about you and didn't agree to you immediately because there were still people auditioning in the afternoon. Mr. Zhou raised his head slightly and looked at Ning Jing and said, I'm not worried. Even if I'm really not suitable, Lian will find a way. I just hope that I can win this role through my performance. Why did she suddenly feel sour? Ning Jing raised her eyebrows and couldn't help but smile. She looked at Mr. Zhou and said, you do have confidence in him. Of course, since he brought me here, he will definitely not let me go home disappointed. Mr. Zhou was inexplicably wary of Ning Jing, and he would always think of Gong Li when he looked at her. When she was in Suzhou before, she was too careless and allowed Gong Li to take advantage of her. She will definitely not do it this time. Strict defense is Mr. Zhou's first rule for filming this time. Ning Jing felt a little strange. Mr. Zhou seemed to always show off whether Chen Lian was good to her, intentionally or unintentionally. Was he trying to protect herself? Thinking of this, Ning Jing felt a little funny. She shook her head slightly and said, since you are so confident, I won't comfort you. Mr. Zhou said politely, thank you, I'll leave first. Okay, bye. Ning Jing looked at Mr. Zhou's back and felt that she really liked this girl. She was very charming in her bones. The only bad thing is that I am a little too nervous about Chen Lian. If I want to have something happen with Chen Lian, do I have to wait until the Red River Valley? On the other side, Mr. Zhou returned to the hotel and waited for Chen Lian all afternoon but still didn't come back, so he called him. In the dance practice room, the phone rang for a long time before Chen Lian took out his own phone and connected it. Hey, what's wrong? Listening to Chen Lian's breathing, Mr. Zhou asked strangely, what are you doing? It's nothing, I just exercised. Chen Lian turned his head and glanced at Joji, who was deliberately causing trouble. He couldn't help but patted her and made a quiet gesture before continuing on the phone, how was your audition? It's very good. Director Feng told me to inform me tomorrow. Mr. Zhou was lying on the big bed in the hotel, smelling the scent left by Chen Lian on the pillow and asked, when will you come back? I miss you so much. Hey, cough, cough. I'll go back in a minute. Chen Lian took the phone and glared at Joji, who was practicing the butt-shaking dance, and said in a controlled voice, I won't tell you now. You can wait for me in the hotel. After speaking quickly, Chen Lian hung up the phone. Joji, who had her back to Chen Lian, turned her head and glanced at him resentfully, then opened her mouth as if to ask Chen Lian if he could speak now. Joji responded with clear slaps, and Chen Lian beat the beat to indicate that Joji should continue practicing dance and no longer need to suppress her voice. Dancing must have a rhythm, otherwise the rhythm will easily go wrong. When Chen Lian returned to the hotel in the evening, he was exhausted. Dancing was too exhausting. Teacher Zhou was too strict and performed difficult moves again and again. He said that he was about to go abroad and would no longer be able to teach Chen Lian frequently. It would be cruel to have to practice to the point in one go. However, Teacher Zhou has gone abroad, and no one will teach Chen Lian how to dance in the future. Although Li Dabai and Chen Zihan can also dance, they are not good enough to teach Chen Lian. He still needs to find a more professional teacher. Chen Lian suddenly thought of Mrs. Chu Yongxiang, whom he watched last year. That was a good teacher. He didn't know when he could learn dancing from her. At the door of the hotel room, when Chen Lian opened the door and went in, he saw that Mr. Zhou had fallen asleep on the bed because he had waited too long. There was a ball of red rope scattered on the white sheets. Chen Lian walked over and picked up the rope and pulled it. Only then did he realize that the other end was in Mr. Zhou's hand. This girl was so impatient. Chen Lian looked at the sleeping Mr. Zhou, skillfully picked up the rope and began to wrap it around him. I recently learned a new way to tie knots, and I will try it tonight. Mr. Zhou woke up after a while. Just when he wanted to move his hands and feet, he found that he couldn't seem to move. When he opened his eyes, it was pitch black. Ghost on the bed? Have a nightmare? Immediately afterwards, Mr. Zhou heard a familiar voice and felt slightly relieved. Just when he wanted to open his mouth to speak, he was blocked and couldn't say a word. Well. A thought suddenly arose in Mr. Zhou's dazed consciousness. This nightmare is so exciting. This ghost is so big. Why is he drooling all the time? Will the pillow get wet? Early the next morning, Chen Lian saw that young Master Zhou had had a nightmare last night and had not slept well. He went to the Shanghai film studio alone without asking her to get up. When he came back, he could give young Master Zhou a surprise. More than 2 hours later, Chen Lian and Chen Miran's advertising companies had 1 million less in their accounts, but they had received 3 contracts in exchange. I hope the movie can sell for a little more money by then, otherwise it will be a big loss. When Mr. Zhou woke up and saw the contract in front of him, he jumped up from the bed and hugged Chen Lian and said, "Thank you." "Why are you thanking me?" "Director Feng hired you because he thought your acting skills were good," Chen Lian said with a smile. Mr. Zhou looked into Chen Lian's eyes and did not dwell on the reason why he successfully won the contract. He just kept his good intentions in mind. This man must have spent a lot of money on his role, love him to death. Although spending money cannot represent the depth of feelings, those who don't spend money definitely have no feelings. This is an ironclad truth. After the funds for Red River Valley were secured, the Shanghai film studio was also fully mobilized. It took no effort to set up the crew. Within 2 hours of direct notification, a crew was ready. Feng Xiaoning looked at the crew in front of him and felt his heart surge. It had been a long time since he had controlled a crew. Looking at the respect in everyone's eyes, Feng Xiaoning loved this feeling. Immediately began to arrange various tasks, and the next day after finalizing the other roles in the movie, he took the people to the southwest, to the roof of the world to see the snow-capped mountains, and to see where suitable for filming. The crew is preparing and the actors have been gathered. All that's left is to wait for the director's call to go to the snowy mountains to start the official filming. Chen Lian and Mr. Zhou have returned to the capital. As soon as Mr. Zhou returned to the capital, he went into seclusion to study the script. Chen Lian didn't need to study the script, as he was currently enduring the nagging from Beauty Chen. "Didn't you say you won't invest so much? Why did you suddenly increase the investment by hundreds of thousands, and what happened to the second female lead?" Chen Miran looked at Chen Lian and couldn't help but talk about it, and she was very confident. Chen Lian looked at Chen Miran's question with a hand on her waist, and sat on the sofa and said, "Director Feng's budget is not enough. I don't want this movie to abort, so I pursued the project." I am just recommending the second female lead. Chen Myron snorted and said, recommendation? Whatever you say, you know exactly what's going on. Don't worry about such a trivial matter. Chen Lian pulled Mei Chen over and asked, why do you feel like you've become a little plumper after the Chinese New Year? When she heard Chen Lian's words, a trace of pride flashed in Chen Myron's eyes, but she concealed it very well and pretended not to care. Maybe I ate too much. Anyway, I won't be an actor anymore. Just be a little fatter. Well, it looks better if it's plumper. Chen Lian squeezed Myron Chen's little hand and was about to make a move when Myron Chen held it down. As if she suddenly remembered something, she said to Chen Lian, I forgot to pack my things. Tomorrow we're about to go to Wanwan, I'll pack my things first. Chen Lian didn't think much about it. Beauty Chen did look a bit like a strong woman now, with a strong sense of professionalism, so she nodded and said, then you go and take care of it. Seeing that Chen Lian was not overly concerned, Chen Myron breathed a sigh of relief and spoke to him for a few more words before entering the bedroom to pack her things. After entering the bedroom, Beauty Chen patted her chest. She was especially glad that Chen Lian was going to film a movie soon, otherwise she would be exposed. She couldn't show off her cards until she was completely stable. Feng Xiaoning moved very quickly. It should be said that the Shanghai film studio moved very quickly. Mr. Zhou didn't wait long before he received the notice to go to the Yellow River to start construction. Chen Lian and Ning Jing had to wait for a while longer. At young Master Zhou's house, Chen Lian looked at the things that young Master Zhou was loading into the box and couldn't help but said, you don't need to bring these things when you go filming, right? Then do you want to use it? Mr. Zhou put a bulging black storage bag into the box, looked back at Chen Lian and said, I won't take it with you if you don't want it. Snow mountains and grasslands are very exciting just thinking about it. Chen Lian, it's really exciting. Then you'd better take it with you. Chen Lian touched his nose and said. Mr. Zhou snorted and said, I don't know you yet, you are a duplicitous man. Have you bought the ticket? What time does the train leave? Chen Lian asked, changing the subject. I'm going to drive there without buying a ticket. I like the feeling of freedom when driving, Mr. Zhou said while packing his things. Chen Lian frowned and said, it's hard for you to drive so far by yourself. Mr. Zhou said nonchalantly, it's okay. It's been a few days. I'll drive slowly and treat it as a trip. As long as you are happy with it. Chen Lian looked at Mr. Zhou, who was very interested and did not displease her. After sending Mr. Zhou away, Chen Lian went to school and listened to Li Keji's nagging. He also got a note of leave and also played with Chen Zihan for several days. Chen Lian waited in the capital for less than 2 weeks when a notice from Feng Xiaoning came, asking Chen Lian to go directly to the snowy mountains in the southwest. In the studio, Chen Lian put down the brush in his hand, looked at Li Dabai who was dozing, shook her awake and asked, did you recruit the person you hired last time? Li Dabai rubbed his eyes and said, we've hired him, and he can go to work tomorrow. Chen Lian stood in front of the washstand, washing his hands in the basin with peonies printed on it, and asked without looking back, I will join the set for filming the day after tomorrow, do you want to go? Go. Li Dabai immediately became energetic and said excitedly, I haven't seen the snow-capped mountains yet. Chen Lian pulled off the towel on the shelf and wiped his hands and asked, the conditions there are very poor, are you sure? Sure. You can work and travel, why not go? Li Dabai smirked and said, and Jifa told me that there will be subsidies for business trips. Chen Lian, he couldn't tell for a moment whether Li Dabai was doing it for the subsidy or for traveling. Anyway, it had nothing to do with work. Grassland, snow-capped mountains, and temples, when combined together, these words give people a sense of vastness and purity, but this literal feeling is very empty. When Chen Lian actually saw those scenes, he truly understood the feeling. At this moment, Chen Lian felt that his body and mind had been cleansed. Chen Lian stood under the snow-capped mountains and opened his arms, wanting to feel the pure and unpolluted nature's fresh air. After taking a deep breath, he was immediately choked by the cold air from the snow-capped mountains. The tour guide in front immediately turned around and ran over, telling Chen Lian to cover his mouth and stop coughing. Chen Lian also reacted and immediately covered his mouth to suppress his cough. His face was red and he was staring at the snow-capped mountains. After enduring it for a while, Chen Lian finally stopped coughing, looked at the tour guide and subconsciously asked in a low voice, "Will it really cause an avalanche?" The tour guide wearing a sheepskin jacket laughed loudly and said, "No, the snow-capped mountains are not that fragile." "Then you..." Chen Lian came to his senses and couldn't help but raise his fist and hit the tour guide Duoji and said, "You deliberately scared me, right?" Duoji laughed and said, "Although I'm trying to scare you, the snowy mountains are about to melt this season, so it's still very dangerous. You must be careful." Chen Lian looked at the grass with green buds at the foot of the snow-capped mountains and nodded. No matter what, he still had to pay attention to safety. The foreign actor Jones, who was traveling with Chen Lian, also breathed a sigh of relief at this time. He spoke good Chinese and could understand the conversation between Chen Lian and Duoji. He was also shocked at first. Chen Lian turned to look at him and said, "Jones, let's get Duoji drunk together tonight." "Okay, but are you sure we can get him drunk?" Jones asked with a smile. Chen Lian looked at the wine bag hanging on Duoji's waist and said, "How will you know if you don't try it?" Duoji laughed loudly and said, "Come on, I'll take care of the wine." The scene at the foot of the snow-capped mountains was not difficult because there were no avalanches, so what else would it be difficult to do? However, we had to wait for another day before the official filming. Although the avalanche will not be filmed in real life, blowing up the snow-capped mountains, Feng Xiaoning does not intend to remove the scene, and is studying special photography with photography and props. It is actually very difficult to use special photography to capture the magnificence of an avalanche. It comes from the power of nature. Without the blessing of digital special effects, it is simply too difficult to capture it. The prop team has temporarily built several rock areas 2 people high and is piling snow on them layer by layer. Feng Xiaoning smoked a cigarette and looked at the rockery, then turned to look at the real snow-capped mountains in the distance, and couldn't help but sigh. It's obviously something that can be done with just one explosive, but now it's so troublesome. There are so many snow-capped mountains here, it doesn't hurt to blow up a few. In a jeep, Chen Lian and Duoji sat at the front of the car, drinking and chatting while looking at the snow-capped mountains in the distance. Duoji took a sip of wine and said, "Every snow mountain here has been baptized by tens of thousands of years. This is a gift from God to our people." Chen Lian nodded and looked at the majestic snow-capped mountains. He really couldn't understand why Feng Xiaoning wanted to blow it up. What a beautiful landscape! The miraculous craftsmanship of nature is nothing more than that. Duoji glanced at the fake snow mountain, turned to Chen Lian and said, "Thank you, my friend. I heard that you stopped them from blowing up the snow mountain. You are a good person." "Good man." Chen Lian muttered these 2 words, and for a moment his thoughts drifted into the distance along the majestic snow-capped mountains. Fringe artists in the entertainment industry. Author, Chizu de Xiaomao. Chapter 199. Chapter 195-193. The wind blows the grass and the grass comes to light. Dorji, have you ever seen an avalanche? Under the quiet starry sky at night, Chen Lian asked while looking at the snow-capped mountains that were still eye-catching in the night. Duoji looked at the snow-capped mountains in the distance and seemed to be lost in memories. After a while, he said, "It's very scary. I hope I will never see it again." The 2 were silent for a while, and then Dorji added, "The sound made by an avalanche is like thunder or an earthquake. There will be a loud rumble, a sharp sound, and the overwhelming snow will drown everything." Duoji's description was very pale. Chen Lian heard fear in his voice at that time, as if he had experienced an avalanche himself. Chen Lian picked up the wine bag in his hand, took a sip, handed it to Duoji and said, "After drinking, go to bed early." Yes, Duoji took the wine bag and raised his head to take a sip, sitting on the grass and still looking at the snow-capped mountains in the distance. Chen Lian returned to his temporary tent, opened his sleeping bag and got in. Li Dabai's voice suddenly came from another tent next to his tent. "Teacher Chen, I'm so cold." Chen Lian turned around and glanced. Li Dabai's tent was still lit, and he could see her reflection. Li Dabai seemed to be lying on his side, facing him. "Isn't your sleeping bag warm?" Chen Lian touched his sleeping bag and felt it was quite warm. Li Dabai huddled in his sleeping bag, his breath filled with white mist, his nose turned red from the cold, and he whispered, "It's not warm, I feel like I'm going to freeze to death." "Then wait a minute. I'll go change sleeping bags with you. I still have a few down jackets here. You can put on a few more layers." Chen Lian got up and got out of the sleeping bag, dug out some clothes and a bottle of liquor, opened the tent and went out. When Chen Lian came out of the tent, Duoji was still sitting on the grass looking at the snow-capped mountains. This Tibetan man seemed not afraid of the cold here. After looking at Duoji, Chen Lian withdrew his gaze. Everyone has their own worries and needs a night without being disturbed to feel lonely. Chen Lian came to the door of Li Dabai's tent, sniffed and said, "Open the tent, otherwise the hot sleeping bag will get cold again." Stab. The tent was pulled open by Li Dabai from the inside, and a little face that was red from the cold was revealed and looked at Chen Lian pitifully. Chen Lian hurriedly stuffed things into her and said, "Get in and warm yourself up. Cover yourself with these clothes. Remember to take off your coat when you sleep, otherwise you will be even colder when you wake up tomorrow morning. If it's still cold, take a sip of wine. Go to sleep again. After the scenes here are filmed in the past 2 days, we can change places. Then we will have a house to live in." Chen Lian comforted in a low voice. "Thank you." Li Dabai took the sleeping bag into the tent and handed his own to Chen Lian. Chen Lian took it and touched it with his hand. Sure enough, it was a little thinner than his own. "Isn't the cruise logistics really good? I'll give him trouble tomorrow. Go to sleep quickly." Chen Lian took the sleeping bag and ran back to his tent. Just as Chen Lian got back into his tent and lay down in his sleeping bag, Li Dabai's voice came from next door again. "Teacher Chen, I am much warmer now. Thank you. Is it cold for you to sleep with me?" Chen Lian sniffed and said, "I have been trained to withstand freezing. I have forgotten the name of my first movie. Go to sleep as soon as it warms up." "Oh, good night, Teacher Chen." Li Dabai huddled in the sleeping bag and sniffed. He smelled the clothes on the sleeping bag and the smell of Chen Lian. A smile suddenly appeared on his face. He reached out to turn out the lantern, closed his eyes and prepared to sleep. Chen Lian on the other side took out his sleeping bag, took a small bottle of Urquatu, opened it and took a sip. Then he felt a little warmer and slowly closed his eyes. Just as he was getting ready to sleep, he heard Li Dabai's voice coming from the tent next to him. "Teacher Chen, are you asleep?" Chen Lian opened his eyes helplessly and said, "No, what's wrong?" In the dark tent, Li Dabai lay on his side as if he could see Chen Lian through the 2-story tent. He blushed and said with embarrassment, "I want to go to the toilet, but I don't dare to go by myself." Chen Lian, life in the wild is really troublesome, but it is indeed a bit dangerous for Li Dabai to go to the toilet alone in the middle of the night. "You hold the lamp, I'll go with you." Chen Lian sat up again and said. Listening to the rustling sound of getting dressed over there, Li Dabai also turned on the lantern and got out of the sleeping bag. More than a minute later, the two met outside the tent. Li Dabai, holding a lantern, looked at Chen Lian with a blushing face and whispered, "Thank you, Teacher Chen." Chen Lian held a flashlight in his hand and said, "It's okay, hurry up, I'm going to freeze to death." the temperature difference between day and night is too big. Li Dabai immediately followed Chen Lian with a lantern in hand. After a while, the two of them came to a piece of grass 30 to 40 centimeters long. Chen Lian took a flashlight and looked around and said, "That's it, I'll wait for you here." As he spoke, Chen Lian turned his back, clamped the flashlight firmly under his arm, pointed the light behind himself, and then said, "I won't peek. If you see the flashlight light flickering, that's me peeping." Seeing Chen Lian's careful actions, Li Dabai felt a flash of emotion in his heart, and walked towards the lusher grassland with the lantern. After a while, Chen Lian heard a rustling sound coming from behind him, as well as an embarrassing sound of water flowing. Chen Lian was embarrassed and recited 300 Tang poems silently in his heart, trying to be more elegant and not to be too imaginative, but a poem suddenly appeared in Chen Lian's mind, and he couldn't forget it no matter what. The wind blows and the grass is low enough to see the white. Chen Lian couldn't help but sigh. He could no longer look directly at this line of poetry. No, he couldn't look straight at the entire poem. In a short time, Li Dabai came back with a lantern in hand. His face was flushed and he didn't know whether it was from the cold or because of shyness. Anyway, he didn't say a word after he walked in front of Chen Lian. Chen Lian didn't know what to say, but he just led the way back with Li Dabai. Back in front of the tent, Li Dabai looked at Chen Lian's back and whispered thank you before getting back into his tent. Li Dabai returned to his sleeping bag and blinked, not knowing what he was thinking. With a faint smile on his lips, he fell asleep quickly. At dawn the next day, Chen Lian opened his eyes and saw Li Dabai squatting in his tent, blinking at him with big eyes. Chen Lian felt a little headache, struggled to sit up, looked at Li Dabai and asked, "Why are you here?" Li Dabai pointed at the clothes on Chen Lian's sleeping bag and said, "I'm afraid you've caught a cold, so come here and take a look. I'll bring you clothes to cover you with." In the small tent, as soon as Chen Lian sat up, he bumped into Li Dabai's head. Li Dabai covered his forehead and let out a small cry of pain. Chen Lian touched his forehead and felt that there was no fever. Then he looked at Li Dabai and said, "I'm fine. Check to see if breakfast is ready. I'm already hungry. Let's eat noodles this morning. The master is already making them." Li Dabai opened a gap in the tent and took a look outside and said, "The water hasn't boiled yet." After Chen Lian heard this, he lay back down again, but he still felt too cold when he got up. Chen Lian was lying in his sleeping bag, looking at Li Dabai squatting there and asking, "How did you sleep last night? Was it still cold afterwards?" "One thing, I'm afraid of the cold." Li Dabai squeezed into the tent again, and it seemed to be warmer inside. Chen Lian looked at Li Dabai, who was dressed like a bear, speechlessly and said, "Now you regret coming with us. We have seen the snow-capped mountains. Buy a ticket and go back tomorrow." Li Dabai said nothing, just looked at Chen Lian and shook his head. "It's up to you. When you've had enough fun, you can go back by yourself." From the corner of his eye, Chen Lian saw Li Dabai's cold red hands huddled in his sleeves and asked, "Why don't you wear gloves?" Li Dabai shrank his hands into his sleeves and said, "I just got up and washed my face and forgot to put them on." Chen Lian was really convinced. With his ability to take care of himself, he still worked as an assistant. Apart from being able to cook, drive, flatter, and be good-looking, it seemed that it was enough if he had any other talents. "Hurry back and put on gloves. Call me when the noodles are ready." Chen Lian kicked Li Dabai away angrily, squatting here and treating himself like a patient. After a while, Li Dabai came in again, sniffling and said to Chen Lian, "The noodles are ready, and there are steamed buns, but many people say they taste terrible. As long as it tastes bad, these chefs only want to ensure that you don't starve to death. They don't care whether it tastes good or not." Chen Lian got out of the sleeping bag and went to the chef's side with a toothbrush and towel. After borrowing some hot water to wash his face and brush his teeth, Chen Lian filled a bowl of sticky noodles with a lunch box, took another steamed bun, and finished it with noodle soup and mustard. Although it didn't taste good, the hot noodles still warmed the body. Chen Lian watched the rising sun imprint the golden sunlight on the snow-capped mountains and emit dazzling light. He couldn't help but open his arms to welcome the sunshine shining on him. On the other side of the cauldron, a makeup artist from the production team and Li Dabai were eating noodles together and asked in a low voice, "Is your boss usually like this?" Li Dabai was stunned for a moment and asked, "What kind?" The makeup artist took a sip of noodles and said, "We are all freezing to death, but he is still in the mood to embrace the sun." Li Dabai glanced at the staff around him who were shivering from the cold, bit his noodles and said, "Teacher Chen is different from you." "What's the difference?" "It's just different anyway." Facing the idiot assistant makeup artist, he just smiled. After showing off the noodles in the bowl, he ran to Chen Lian and said, "Teacher Chen, let's go put on makeup. Your hair needs a wig, which will take a long time." Chen Lian grabbed his hair and asked, "Will the hair extensions remove my original hair?" The makeup artist smiled and said, "No, if Teacher Chen is worried, you can also shave it off and wear a wig, and the makeup effect will be better." Shaved, Chen Lian touched his forehead and said, "It's not impossible, I haven't shaved my hair yet." Makeup artist, Mr. Chen, are you kidding me? How can any male celebrity be willing to shave his head? But looking at Chen Lian's handsome face, the makeup artist suddenly thought that shaving his head might not be a bad idea. "Holy monk, do you want to stay and get married? It is indeed troublesome to add hair extensions." In order to match the era and the image of the male protagonist in the movie, Chen Lian had very long hair extensions, and the makeup artist also deliberately applied mousse, and after drying, he rubbed it into a chicken coop. Chen Lian looked at himself in the mirror, looking like he hadn't washed his hair in hundreds of years. He felt like he could be a bird's new house. It had 3 bedrooms and 2 living rooms, luxurious decoration, and a built-in incense that would last for a long time. After arranging his hair, the makeup artist darkened Chen Lian's face, making him look wilder and healthier. After finishing her face, the makeup artist said with some anticipation, "Teacher Chen, take off your shirt and paint your body black." It was already past 9 o'clock, the sun was high in the sky, and the temperature was not that low. Chen Lian took off his clothes without hesitation and exposed his chest. The moment he took off his clothes, Chen Lian couldn't help but shudder. It was still too cold. The sun was of no use. Li Dabai stood aside and looked at Chen Lian's chest muscles and couldn't help but poke them with his fingers. When watching the movie The Winner, she fantasized about doing this one day. "I didn't expect my dream to come true so quickly. It's such a blessing to be an assistant to an idol." Chen Lian looked at the excited Li Dabai speechlessly. Just when he was about to say something to her, the makeup artist next to him pressed his hands directly on Chen Lian's chest. Chen Lian immediately turned to look at the makeup artist, and saw a sullen expression on her face, and she even scratched Chen Lian's chest muscles with her fingers. What's going on with these women? Chen Lian took a step back, avoided the clutches of the makeup artist and looked at her and said, "Give me the foundation and I'll apply it myself." The makeup artist immediately put on a professional look and said, "Teacher Chen, you can't control the shade of the color yourself. It would be bad if it doesn't match your face." Chen Lian, can you find a better reason? In order to prevent the makeup artist from continuing to take advantage of himself, Chen Lian insisted on applying it himself, determined not to give these perverts a chance to take advantage. "Oh, Teacher Chen is so unprofessional." The makeup artist and Li Dabai stood aside and watched Chen Lian apply color on himself, and couldn't help saying with emotion, "You don't even believe in my professional ethics." Li Dabai stared at Chen Lian's chest muscles and nodded subconsciously. "Right, you also think I have my own professional ethics." The makeup artist saw Li Dabai nodding and said immediately, "Please help me persuade Teacher Chen." After coming back to his senses, Li Dabai looked at the makeup artist and said, "Do you believe this?" The makeup artist muttered guiltily, "If you don't believe me, just touch it twice at most." "I haven't touched it yet." "Why should I touch you?" "If you want to touch it, the assistant should touch it first." Li Dabai snorted, and the brief friendship with the makeup artist came to an end. "You must keep an eye on her when putting on makeup from now on, and don't let her take advantage of Teacher Chen." At this time, Li Dabai finally awakened to his working spirit and remembered his mission as an assistant. Li Dabai looked at Chen Lian's strong and plump muscles and secretly swore in his heart that he would protect the sexy Teacher Chen to the death. Soon Chen Lian applied it on himself. Looking at his bronzed skin in the mirror, Chen Lian nodded with satisfaction. He was ready to participate in a bodybuilding competition. The makeup artist came over with great pity and handed Chen Lian a thick Tibetan leather jacket. It looked like a warrior uniform, but the workmanship was not exquisite, it was rough and shabby. However, the male protagonist is just an ordinary hunter, and wearing such clothes is consistent with the character's identity. After the facelift, Chen Lian no longer recognizes the shadow of the previous artist, just like a real Tibetan young man. The bronze skin, the short knife on his waist, the musket carried on his back, the messy hair and the rough smile look more like a Tibetan than Duoji, a Tibetan. Duoji looked at Chen Lian and couldn't help but slap him on the shoulder and said, "You are so similar. If I didn't know that you are Han, I would have regarded you as a Tibetan brother." Chen Lian laughed loudly, pulled open half of his collar to expose half of his shoulders and arms, looked at Duoji and asked, "Is this action right?" "Yes, but your eyes should be more fierce. You are still too gentle." Chen Lian nodded. As a warrior, his eyes are naturally fierce, but the male protagonist is a person who does not kill. Although the light in his eyes is powerful, he is still fierce. However, Duoji does not know the setting of the script, and Chen Lian has not passed it. Explain more. This avalanche scene is mainly the scene in the movie where the male protagonist, the second male lead and the villain, the British colonel, meet. The British colonel who was blocked by the male protagonist fired a shot on the snowy mountain and triggered an avalanche. He was finally saved by the male protagonist. At the same time, he also laid the foundation for this peaceful land and brought war. The avalanche scene had to be shot first. Feng Xiaoning spent the whole morning working with photography and props there, as well as making the fake snow mountain for special photography. Feng Xiaoning smoked a cigarette irritably and looked at the props and asked, "How long will it take to get it ready?" The prop looked at him and said helplessly, "I just tried it a few times but the effect was not good. I am adjusting it. It should be almost the same this time." "Then start quickly, I've been wasting 2 days here," Feng Xiaoning urged. The prop master couldn't help but rolled his eyes in his heart. "If you have the ability, just make an avalanche." Easier said than done. However, the prop masters of this era were still very capable, and they could decorate the fake snow mountain in just a short time. Feng Xiaoning looked at the snow-capped mountains that were reproduced almost one-to-one and nodded with satisfaction, then said to the photographer holding the camera, "Get ready, start right away." The props and photographers looked at each other and discussed the rhythm of filming and the timing of the snowy mountains breaking out before walking to the rockery and starting filming. Chen Lian squatted in the corner next to him, looking at the perfectly reproduced snow-capped mountains. He felt that spending 2 days and a lot of money was really not important. Geologists can't bear to destroy such beautiful snow-capped mountains and such good glaciers. What qualifications does Feng Xiaoning have as a movie maker? No one has this qualification. Boom. Under the control of the prop master, the fake snow mountain avalanched in an instant. The photographer almost stuck the lens in the snow while carrying the camera. The footage was soon finished. In the shed of the Jifang truck, Feng Xiaoning watched the playback on the monitor and felt dissatisfied. This was not as good looking as a real avalanche, but after seeing Chen Lian roll over in the carriage, Feng Xiaoning did not express what was in his heart. The two people from the province had a conflict in front of everyone on the crew, and they couldn't make a bad face in front of the financial sponsor Feng Xiaoning. If they got into a fight, their prestige in the crew would be affected. Feng Xiaoming just raised his head and smiled at Chen Lian, then lowered his head and patted the seat next to him to signal Chen Lian to come over and read the material. Chen Lian didn't think too much. Seeing Feng Xiaoning, who was so understanding of people and the world, Chen Lian felt that the 1 million investment was quite worthwhile. The director spoke softly to himself. Money is the most depressing thing in this world. Fringe artists in the entertainment industry. Author, Chizu de Xiaomao. Chapter 200. Chapter 196-194. No soundproofing. The snow-capped mountains are majestic and sacred, and the beauty of nature cannot be created by a few prop masters in a few days. The effect of the avalanche's special photography is not as spectacular as imagined. After Feng Xiaoning frowned and read it, he turned to look at Chen Lian, who looked quite satisfied. He couldn't help complaining and said in his heart, "What the hell is this shot? It can't be used at all." After complaining, Feng Xiaoning turned to look at the props and photography and cursed meaningfully, "It took 2 days to build this thing? Is it as thrilling as an avalanche?" Chen Lian turned his head and glanced at Feng Xiaoning, stood up, clapped his hands and said, "I think it's pretty good. Although it's a little flawed, the effect is still pretty good. We haven't seen an avalanche yet. Let Duoji take a look." After saying that, Chen Lian shouted to Duoji outside the tent, "Duoji, come in and take a look at the avalanche we took." Duoji, who was outside the tent, walked in. After watching it, he was silent for a while and said, "The photo was really good." Chen Lian held back his smile and glanced at Feng Xiaoning's unsightly expression and said, "Although the shot was good, we have to keep improving. Let the prop brother do it again and take a few more shots to try to get the best effect. Don't be afraid of wasting time. If you take good photos, I will send red envelopes to everyone." Chen Lian's words can be regarded as a step down for Feng Xiaoning. Although he was unhappy, he had promised Chen Lian when he first invested in it, and it was hard to fall out now. After all, he could not violate the contract even if he was given money. Feng Xiaoning took a deep breath, looked at the props and photography, and said, "You continue, we'll shoot other scenes first." Hearing Feng Xiaoning's compromise, Chen Lian would not deny him face again, so he said, "Director Feng, I am ready and can start at any time. I can shoot whenever you want." After hearing Chen Lian's words, Feng Xiaoning's face looked much better and he began to prepare for the filming of the next scene. The grass outside the tent was already filled with more than 7 or 8 extras. They had already changed into Z costumes. There were several horses standing beside them. Duoji was feeding the horses, and they were all waiting for the next scene to start. Woolen cloth. Jones, a colonel and explorer from Western civilization wearing a suit and coat, fell in love with this place while riding a horse looking at the vast land and snow-capped mountains. Their clothes formed a huge contrast with the simple Z people here, but the colonel's words and deeds were not gentlemanly or civilized at all. Faced with the leader of the Z caravan who prevented him from exploring in depth, the colonel threatened them with the gun in his hand, and fired a shot into the white sky. The huge gunshot seemed to anger the snowy mountains, and countless layers of ice and snow rolled down from the snowy mountains, burying them. Although this land does not have the guns and cannons of industrial civilization, it still has its own inviolable majesty. After the scene was filmed, it was the turn of Sanger, played by Chen Lian, to appear. He took his young son Gaga to discover the colonel and Jones buried in the snow and rescued them. The majesty of this land complements Sanger's kindness very well, and also forms a strong contrast with the colonels and Jones from Western civilization. It's just that Sanger didn't know at this time that he had rescued a demon that was about to bring disaster to this land. It was not difficult to shoot these scenes. It took 2 days to complete the filming. Even the special shots of the snow mountain avalanche were filmed. The crew was packing their things and preparing to leave the foot of the snow-capped mountains. Chen Lian was still wearing a Z-Tribe's shabby leather jacket and was chatting with his son Gaga. Li Dabai sat aside and watched Chen Lian teasing Gaga with toffee, thinking that he would be a good father in the future, just like Sanger in the movie. Chen Lian looked at Gaga's dirty little face, rubbed it hard, looked at his bright eyes and said, "Whether the toffee tastes good or not depends on whether Dad treats you well." Gaga immediately shook her head and said with her dark and red face, "That's false. You were my father during the filming." "Haha, Gaga, he is indeed my good son, you call him Uncle Duoji." Walked over from the side at this time, picked up Gaga, looked at Chen Lian with a smile, and said, "My brother, you can't take my son away." Chen Lian looked at Gaga with candy in his mouth and couldn't help but pinch his little face and said, "Gaga is awesome. He will definitely be a smart warrior in the future. You must study hard." Gaga shook her head and buried her head in Duoji's arms, looking at Chen Lian with bright and dark eyes, still biting the toffee hard with her bulging mouth. Chen Lian smiled, made a face at Gaga, and went to pack his things with Li Dabai. "Next, we have to change places to continue shooting. The temperature difference between day and night under the snow-capped mountains is too big, and it is inconvenient to view many places here. The most important thing is that the conditions here are too difficult to shoot for a long time." In the tent, Li Dabai helped Chen Lian pack his clothes. Seeing that he was still wearing the shabby leather jacket, he couldn't help but said, "Teacher Chen, take off your clothes. It smells so bad, you are almost turning into a savage." Chen Lian lowered his head and smelled it. There was indeed a strange smell, but he still shook his head and said, "Let's wait until we get to the next place. We can't take a shower now if we change." Chen Lian wouldn't want to change his clothes if possible. Wearing these clothes would help him identify more with the character. After a busy afternoon, the crew has packed up, and several large Jifang trucks are filled with things. Most of the crew were crowded in the truck, but Chen Lian and Li Dabai didn't need to. After all, they were the leading actors and financial backers. Chen Lian was holding Gaga on the jeep, deliberately teasing him, while his father was riding behind, eating ashes. Li Dabai sat next to him, wet the towel with water, and washed Gaga's face, but his movements were a bit rough, and Gaga's face was all red. After wiping Gaga's face, he took the initiative to grab Chen Lian's dark hand and wiped it vigorously. While wiping it back, he complained, "It's you who touched Gaga's face." Chen Lian looked at Gaga's fairer face and laughed, then pinched his little face and said, "Son, when you grow up, don't ever find someone like Aunt Dabai, she won't feel sorry for you at all." He grinned and nodded vigorously, which made Li Dabai pinch his face and said angrily to Chen Lian, "Both of you, father and son, are not good people." Chen Lian and Gaga looked at each other and burst out laughing. Gaga sat in Chen Lian's arms and whispered, "My grandma often says that to me and my dad." Li Dabai blushed when he heard it, and said it as if they were a family of 3. Li Dabai stole a glance at Chen Lian and saw that he was just secretly having fun with Gaga. He felt a lot less embarrassed, but he couldn't help having fun in his heart. He looked at Chen Lian and Gaga and giggled together. It would be nice to have such a cute child in the future. It took 3 or 4 hours along the way before the crew's motorcade arrived at another filming location. Mr. Joe ran over after seeing the motorcade, but after circling around the motorcade, he didn't see where Chen Lian was. Chen Lian stood in front of the jeep with Gaga in his arms, and couldn't help laughing when he saw Mr. Joe, who didn't recognize him. Hearing Chen Lian's laughter, Mr. Joe turned around and looked at Chen Lian, who was dressed as a Z-Clan and holding a child in his arms. He was stunned for several seconds before running over and said with surprise on his face, You have changed too much. Chen Lian pushed aside his messy hair, revealed his face and said with a smile, is the change that big? Big. I didn't even recognize him. Mr. Zhou nodded vigorously, then stretched out his hand to touch Chen Lian's dark face and said, you are no different from the Z people now. Chen Lian smiled and put Gaga on the ground and said, that means I am very successful now. Gaga stood in front of Chen Lian, biting a lollipop and looking at Mr. Zhou, then turned to look at Li Dabai who had just gotten out of the car, with great confusion in his pure eyes. Li Dabai was also looking at Mr. Zhou. Seeing that her hand was still on Chen Lian's face and Chen Lian didn't resist, he suddenly had a bad association in his heart. When I was putting on makeup 2 days ago, I and the makeup artist touched Teacher Chen, but he didn't want to. How could this woman touch his face? Li Dabai looked at young Master Zhou's small size and straight figure, looked down at his missing toes, and couldn't help but doubt Teacher Chen's taste. Does Teacher Chen like the figure of a child like this? Then I don't have any fault. I am just an assistant. How can I have messy thoughts? Mr. Zhou put down his hand, looked at Gaga eating a lollipop and couldn't help but rub his face gently and said, you are Gaga, you are so cute. How about playing with your sister in the evening? She made a loud sound and looked at Mr. Zhou not knowing who she was, but Mr. Zhou had already focused on Li Dabai at this moment. He tilted his head and glanced at Li Dabai and asked, who is this? My assistant is Li Dabai. Chen Lian turned around and introduced, Dabai, this is my friend Mr. Zhou. Teacher Chen, you told me not to call me Dabai in front of a strange woman. Li Dabai seemed unwilling to admit his nickname, or he said it deliberately to show that his relationship with Chen Lian was unusual. A smile appeared on Mr. Zhou's face. He naturally took Chen Lian's arm, pressed against him and said to Li Dabai, I'm glad I met you. Just talk, why are you hugging me so tightly? Li Dabai stared at Mr. Zhou's smiling face and couldn't help but snorted in his heart. Teacher Chen said they were friends, but how could friends be like this? Humph, woman. Chen Lian seemed to smell the smell of gunpowder and couldn't help coughing and said, what, where is the place where I live? I almost fell apart after a bumpy ride in the car. I'll take you there. Mr. Zhou took Chen Lian's arm and was about to pull him away. He turned around and said to Li Dabai, Dabai, please take your luggage, but don't rush to deliver it. Li Dabai was stunned for a moment, don't rush to send it? What do you want to do to Teacher Chen, you little dwarf? Unfortunately, Mr. Zhou had already walked away with Chen Lian on his arm, and only Gaga could see Li Dabai's gnashing of teeth. Gaga bit the lollipop loudly and looked up at Li Dabai and asked, Aunt Dabai, aren't you my uncle's wife? Why did he leave with another woman? The child's words were the most direct. Li Dabai's face darkened, he squeezed out a smile and bent down to look at the innocent Gaga, pinched his little face and said, Gaga, your father is not married. That is a bad woman, you will ignore her. Gaga's face hurt a little from being pinched. She pouted and broke away from Li Dabai's clutches, thinking that her father was indeed right, this woman was not gentle at all. Li Dabai saw Gaga looking at him like a bad woman, and he kicked the tire of the jeep angrily. So angry. They are all white-eyed wolves. On the other side, in an old 2-story building, Mr. Zhou brought Chen Lian to a room. As soon as he entered, he closed the door, pushed Chen Lian to the bed and asked, what's going on with Li Dabai? Why don't I? Did you know you have an assistant? Chen Lian looked at Mr. Zhou's unhappy face and said, my manager arranged it for me. I just started working not long ago. Really? Dabai has already called her. I don't think she has just taken up the job. Mr. Zhou walked up to Chen Lian and sat on him and asked, don't think I don't understand why you called her Dabai. Are you not kind? Chen Lian coughed, hugged Mr. Zhou's waist and said, why are you so jealous all of a sudden? You really misunderstood. You are just a simple assistant. Humph, it's best this way. If I find out during filming, you'll be doomed, Mr. Joe threatened in a soft voice. Ever since he was forced to quit smoking by Chen Lian, Mr. Joe's voice has not developed into a smoky voice. It is still very ethereal, and naturally it has lost its intimidating power. Chen Lian picked up Mr. Joe and said, "Okay, I promise she won't do anything to her. Where can I take a bath? I want to take a bath." Mr. Joe hangs on Chen Lian, resting his chin on his shoulder. He doesn't trust his words at all. He keeps saying that he won't take the initiative all day long. What a big liar. It's quite troublesome to take a bath in this place, but Mr. Joe has been prepared for it. There is a big wooden bucket in the room, which is already filled with hot water, but it is a little cold. She jumped off Chen Lian, picked up the kettle next to her and filled it with boiling hot water. The size of the wooden barrel is not large, so there is no way to take a relaxing bath, but the conditions are simple and I can only wash it casually. The sound of water splashing on the ground suddenly sounded in the room, and the sound of water splashing echoed in the room for a long time. In the corridor outside the door, Li Dabai, who had inquired about Chen Lian's residence, dragged 2 boxes and stood at the door listening to the sounds coming from inside, his face reddening to the point of bleeding. Taking a bath is just like fighting, Li Dabai couldn't help but spat. He stood at the door and listened for a while before carrying the box and leaving. Back in his room, Li Dabai lay softly on the bed, looking at the roof made of wooden boards, and the sound of the rushing water just now always sounded in his mind. The makeup artist who lived in the same room as Li Dabai sat beside the bed and couldn't help but curiously asked, "Is that Mr. Joe and your boss a couple?" "Couple?" Li Dabai sat up suddenly, looked at the makeup artist and said, "No. They are just friends," Teacher Chen said it himself. Friends living together, the makeup artist's heart of gossip immediately burned. Seeing Li Dabai's anxious look, he couldn't help but joked, "I don't think they are just friends. What kind of friends can live together? Why didn't you and the boss lives together? I'm not shameless like that woman." Li Dabai's voice was as low as a mosquito's hum. But the makeup artist still heard it and looked at Li Dabai with a strange smile on his face. The little girl was still too young. She was obviously an assistant, but she didn't seize the opportunity. I don't know if there is a popular saying nowadays, secretaries do it when there is something to do. There are many successful cases of secretaries in society. It would be foolish not to seize such a high-quality man like Chen Lian. That is to say, I am already married, otherwise I would have to find a way to hook up with him. The makeup artist sighed angrily, wondering why he was so stupid and anxious to get married in the first place. He should have been more selective. The 2 women in the room fell into silence inexplicably. For a moment, the room was so quiet that even the voices in the next room could be heard. It's just that they weren't Chen Lian and Mr. Joe next door, otherwise the sounds they heard would have been even more exciting. On the other side, Chen Lian, who had finished taking a shower, looked at his whitened skin and felt a little uncomfortable for a while. Mr. Joe looked at the fair and tender Chen Lian, then stared at his messy hair and said, "Are you sure you don't want to wash your hair?" Chen Lian shook his head and said, "I won't wash it for the time being. It's troublesome to have my hair connected. Let's wash it later." "Then don't sleep with me in your arms at night." Mr. Joe looked at Chen Lian's hair with disgust, feeling that he looked like a homeless man on the roadside. Chen Lian grabbed his hair, smelled it and said, "It doesn't smell." "It just won't work anyway," Mr. Joe said, pushing Chen Lian down on the bed and covering his head with a pillow. Chen Lian, who was under the pillow, said in a muffled voice, "Don't you dislike me? Don't go to bed if you can." Mr. Joe pressed Chen Lian with one hand and said intermittently, "I dislike your hair, but it's not that I dislike it." Double standards. Chen Lian was very angry, and the consequences were serious. Can't these 2 keep their voices down? Ning Jing, who was in the next room, couldn't help but curse. She couldn't read the script in her hand anymore. What on earth were the words written on it? Why did it still move? Ningjing fell on the bed and covered her head with the quilt, wrapping her legs around the quilt and moaning a few times. When eating in the evening, I must remind those two shameless men and women that this place is not soundproof. You really don't know how to take care of single people, it's too much. Ningjing rolled around on the bed twice. The scripts fell to the ground and scattered all over the place. The quilt was all tangled and looked like twists. There is one more chapter, and from now on it will be 2 chapters. Last week, I was almost beaten to death by the extra few days of updates, and the quality also dropped a lot. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fringe artists in the entertainment industry. Author, Chizu de Xiaomao. Chapter 201. Chapter 197-195. Dabai chasing the wind. At night, a bonfire was set up in the courtyard, and Dorhe and his tribe warmly entertained everyone in the crew. Everyone was dancing around the bonfire, and the aroma of beef and mutton filled the yard. Chen Lian cut the mutton with a knife, picked up a piece and stuffed it into his mouth. The aroma of mutton immediately filled the entire mouth. Chen Lian almost bit off his tongue after chewing it twice. Duoji's craftsmanship was so good that he went back to ask what the recipe was. Hand-caught mutton seems to be available in many places, but the taste is different in each place. If the cooking method is similar, it depends on the meat quality of the sheep itself. Chen Lian thought for a moment, and there was no point in asking for the recipe. Without the sheep here, he probably wouldn't be able to make this taste. Sitting next to Chen Lian, Gaga's little hands were covered with mutton fat, and her face was also shiny. She chewed the mutton in her mouth a few times and swallowed it in one gulp. Chen Lian couldn't help but remind, eat slowly, be careful not to fill up your stomach. Gaga turned her head and glanced at Chen Lian, and continued to tear the mutton apart and eat it. After eating another large piece, she wiped her mouth with the back of her hand and said, I haven't eaten mutton for a long time. Hearing Gaga's words, Chen Lian glanced at his thin body, silently picked up a knife, cut the mutton into small pieces and handed it to him, touched his head and said, eat, don't eat so fat, be careful with your stomach, can't stand it. Yeah, Gaga swallowed and couldn't stop nodding. Chen Lian picked up a piece of cheesecake and put it into his mouth, turned to look at Li Dabai who was dancing, and waved to her. Li Dabai, who was dancing with everyone, saw Chen Lian calling him and ran over immediately. He gasped and asked, what's wrong with Teacher Chen? Do you want to dance together? Chen Lian shook his head and said, how much cash do you still have on you? More than 4,600, Li Dabai said quickly. Chen Lian nodded and said, tomorrow you follow the cruise car to buy some sheep and some gifts for Gaga. When Li Dabai heard this, he turned to look at Gaga who was eating meat and nodded, then asked, then do we want to leave some money? No need, there's nothing to spend money on the set. Chen Lian thought for a moment and said, if you see a bank, you can withdraw some more. Do you have your bank book? Bring it, I'll ask Duoji tomorrow where there is a bank here, Li Dabai replied, and then said without hope, but it is probably very far, and the car purchased by the crew may not go there. Let it go, take it if you have it, forget it if you don't have it, Chen Lian said nonchalantly, looking at Li Dabai's red face and said, go dance, you dance quite nicely. Li Dabai said proudly, I'm a professional. Come with Teacher Chen. I'm not teaching you, it's very simple. As he said this, Li Dabai took Chen Lian's arm and wanted to dance together. Chen Lian couldn't resist and went together. Amidst the exotic singing, Chen Lian and Li Dabai joined the team dancing around the bonfire. In the small building behind the yard, Mr. Zhou, who had regained a lot of strength after eating, couldn't help but get up when he heard the lively sounds outside, ready to go down and join in. As soon as young Master Zhou went out, he saw Ning Jing in the next room also opening the door and coming out. There was a faint blush on her face, and her lips were a little dry and she seemed a little dehydrated. The two of them nodded to each other, and Mr. Zhou waited for Ning Jing to come over before asking, "Why didn't you go down until now?" Ning Jing moved her fingers subconsciously, and then said calmly, "I overslept." Ning Jing, whose wrists were sore, looked at Mr. Zhou, who was full of spring breeze but a little soft, and a strange thought arose in her heart, and she couldn't help but feel a trace of resentment. Mr. Zhou didn't notice the weird look in Ning Jing's eyes. She looked like she had just woken up, so he went downstairs with her. The people in the courtyard were still singing and dancing. The figures of Chen Lian and Li Dabai were particularly eye-catching among the crowd. Ning Jing subconsciously turned her head and glanced at Mr. Zhou. Mr. Zhou looked at Chen Lian, who was dancing hand in hand with Li Dabai, with a normal expression. He didn't show any jealousy at all. "Aren't you angry?" Ning Jing asked strangely. She was very defensive about herself before in Shanghai, but now she didn't react when she saw Chen Lian dancing with other women. Mr. Zhou turned his head and looked at Ning Jing and said, "Why are you angry? Everyone is dancing, isn't it normal?" Seeing Mr. Zhou's abnormal behavior, Ning Jing shook her head subconsciously, turned to look at Chen Lian, and found that he was dancing hand in hand with the makeup artist of the crew again, and after 2 turns, he joined Jones again. Dance with energy. Seeing Chen Lian's active performance, Ning Jing suddenly felt that there was nothing unusual, and she would join in the fun later. After the two of them found a place to sit down and have something to eat, they were coaxed and dragged to dance together by others. The courtyard was filled with laughter throughout the night. People of different nationalities, places, and races were all happy at this moment without any distinction. Dance is the best means of communication between different civilizations. The wood in the bonfire made a crackling sound under the burning flames, the red flames kept jumping, and the scarlet sparks slowly rose under the air current and floated into the night sky, then extinguished and disappeared. After an unknown amount of time, the bonfire in the yard gradually extinguished, and only silence remained in the lively yard. Only the unburned wood occasionally made 2 crackling air explosions. Early the next morning, Chen Lian, who was in a daze, heard the sound of chanting sutras. He subconsciously opened his eyes and sat up from the bed. He glanced at Mr. Zhou, who was still sleeping. Chen Lian put on his coat and got up. "When I came to the window and opened a gap, I looked at the temple on the hillside not far away that was emitting golden light under the early sun, as if I felt a call. In the quiet temple, the smell of sandalwood is particularly good, and the sound of the prayer wheel can't help but make people's thoughts settle. All impurities seem to have been washed away, leaving only the purest thoughts in the heart." Chen Lian looked at the murals on the temple walls and couldn't help but want to get closer to see the magnificent and mysterious art from thousands of years ago. Jones, who also came with him, and the foreign actor who played the colonel couldn't help but sigh when they looked at the mural with strong oriental colors in front of them. "Oriental art is so beautiful." Chen Lian turned to look at them and said, "That's right, but the murals here have been robbed and stolen." Jones and the colonel stopped talking as soon as the words robbery and theft came out. Although they did not do it themselves, it was done by their own country. There are tens of thousands of Oriental artworks and antiques in the Big Y Museum, none of which are in normal collections. Everyone knows what those cruel and shameless armies did in history. Red River Valley is a story about repelling the invaders. In the movie, Jones and the colonel play the invaders. Chen Lian patted them on the shoulders and said, "You are very good. Thank you very much for making this movie. Thank you for being able to face that period of history." Jones sighed and said, "I like Eastern culture and I love this place. I hope that through this film, everyone can realize the mistakes in history and face history squarely." The colonel nodded beside him. Although he played a bad-natured person in the movie, he himself was a peace-loving person, otherwise he would not have acted in this movie. After several people walked around the temple, Jones suddenly said, "This place is so beautiful, like the purest place in the world." Chen Lian also nodded and looked at the rows of prayer wheels in the temple. "This is a land of faith, but it will also be polluted by a group of people who smell of copper in the future. Capital is perhaps the most devout faith in the world, penetrating into every crevice of the world." After returning from the temple, the crew had already started having breakfast and the work was about to officially begin. After Chen Lian spent more than half an hour putting on his makeup, he also saw Mr. Zhou dressed in red, pure and cute like a red flower. Ning Jing's dress is the opposite of that of Mr. Zhou. She wears pure white Z-tribe clothing and her jewelry is also very gorgeous. She is an aristocratic Lady Danzu. She looks like a pure white snow lotus in the snow-capped mountains, which makes people dare not look directly at her. Chen Lian looked at his dirty clothes. It was hard to imagine that a noble lady would fall in love with him. Maybe people here valued their hearts more. In the movie, Sang-er is a warrior with his own beliefs and persistence. He does not kill anything except wolves, and maintains the purest kindness. In the movie Sang-er saved many people, including Shuer played by Mr. Zhou, and rescued Jones and the Colonel several times. However, Sang-er did not expect that in the end, the Colonel would invade with his army. This setting is simply too realistic. The Colonel shaped by the barbaric industrial civilization and the simple and kind-hearted Sang-er form the strongest contrast. The simple kindness was only exchanged for cruel guns and artillery, allowing people to see the cruelest side of war. The morning scene was shot very quickly. Sang-er once again rescued Jones and the Colonel who were about to be killed by the leader, and also left a deep impression on the leader's daughter Danzu. Jones, who was rescued, and the Colonel were both grateful to Sang-er, who had saved them several times. However, the Colonel was leaving with the terrain map drawn by Jones, and gave Sang-er a lighter before leaving. Jones was too injured and had to stay to recuperate, and Sang-er took him back to his home. In the movie, Sang-er lost his wife in his early years and only had his mother and son Gaga at home. Later, he saved Cher who was being sacrificed, so there was one more person in the family, and now there is another Jones. The composition of this family is very complicated, including Z people, H people, and a white person, but they live happily together without any barriers or discrimination. Jones is a kind-hearted explorer who is fascinated by everything here. He also liked living with Sang-er and the others, and would herd cattle and play on the grass with Gaga. He gained friendship here. After filming that day, Jones looked at the vast grassland, turned to look at Chen Lian and said, "I really like it here. I like the purity in the movie." Chen Lian was riding on horseback, waving a bullwhip and driving the yaks, and said to Jones, "I like it here too. The more complex people are, the more they like the simplicity and purity here. Everything in modern society is developing rapidly. The fast-paced life has made many people lose themselves in the busyness. In fact, it is good to slow down, even if you lie down." Jones didn't quite understand what Chen Lian meant by lying down, but he roughly understood what he meant. He shook his head and said, "Capital chases everything, and some things can't stop." Haha, that's not necessarily the case. When conflicts accumulate to a certain extent, you may see a beautiful scenery. Chen Lian laughed loudly and knocked the horse's belly with his leg as he ran towards the distance. Jones, who was not skilled in equestrian skills, looked at Chen Lian galloping on the grass with envy. He was looking forward to seeing the beautiful scenery Chen Lian mentioned in the future, but he didn't know where it would happen. Filming is very busy, but Chen Lian always takes time to ride a horse on the grassland. The feeling of chasing the wind is really fascinating. When Chen Lian was about to ride out for a walk again, Li Dabai took advantage of Master Zhou to go filming, and took the initiative to run over to Chen Lian and said, "Teacher Chen, I want to go out for a walk, can you take me with you?" Chen Lian sat on the horse and looked at Li Dabai's expectant eyes and said, "Okay, come up." Li Dabai immediately cheered, reached out and grabbed Chen Lian's arm, used his strength to get on his horse and sit behind Chen Lian, holding his arms around his waist. Feeling the touch on his back, Chen Lian clicked his tongue in his heart. It was indeed Li Dabai. Li Dabai hugged Chen Lian a little nervously and said, "Teacher Chen, I won't fall. Can you ride slower later?" "Well, just hold me tight, it'll be okay." Chen Lian gently knocked on the horse's belly, and the docile horse immediately began to trot. Chen Lian, who immediately swayed to the rhythm, felt that he was about to be choked by Li Dabai. He didn't feel the suffocation coming from his face, but first felt the suffocation coming from behind. Chen Lian said helplessly, "Don't hold me so tightly. I'm scared, I'm afraid of falling." There was a hint of panic and nervousness in Li Dabai's voice. Chen Lian slowed down and said, "You have to feel the horse's rhythm, relax your body, and follow its rhythm. You won't fall." Li Dabai swallowed his saliva and imitated Chen Lian's example and followed the rhythm, but he couldn't learn it at all and almost fell down. He grabbed Chen Lian's clothes and screamed in fear. Listening to Li Dabai's screams, Chen Lian felt that his eardrums were about to be destroyed, so he pulled the reins and said helplessly, "You sit in front, you can hold the saddle and step on the stirrups. If you keep doing this, you have to take me down with you." "Oh, I didn't mean it either," Li Dabai said with a red face and some fear. After changing positions, Li Dabai grabbed the saddle and felt Chen Lian's broad chest behind him, and his heart suddenly felt full of security. Chen Lian grabbed the reins and wrapped his arm around Li Dabai. The safety factor increased sharply. "Do you feel better now?" Chen Lian asked softly. Li Dabai felt his ears itching and hummed softly, then grabbed the saddle and said, "Much better, Teacher Chen, you can go a little faster." Upon hearing this, Chen Lian immediately knocked the horse's belly and started trotting on the grassland. Li Dabai felt the wind blowing against his face and the receding scenery, and he felt less nervous. Thinking about what Chen Lian had told him before to follow the rhythm of the horse's running, he stepped on the stirrups with his legs and started to try with a little force. The horses stay on the same page. Chen Lian had no stirrups to step on, so he could only rely on the strength of his thighs and waist to maintain rhythm and balance. After seeing Li Dabai gradually adapting, he immediately patted the horse's back and accelerated the speed. "Ah, Teacher Chen, please slow down, I'm scared." Li Dabai was frightened by the sudden acceleration and held onto the saddle tightly. Chen Lian laughed loudly from behind and said, "Don't worry, it'll be okay. This is the freedom to gallop." Li Dabai leaned forward in fear, grabbing the saddle and almost lying on the horse's back. Seeing Li Dabai find the balance point, Chen Lian speeded up a little more, waved the riding crop in his hand and shouted happily. The syllables coming out of his mouth were the same as those of the Z tribe herdsman. Chen Lian now looks more and more like a wrangler on the plateau. On the vast grassland, the galloping horse and the two people on the horse looked like unrestrained knights, flying freely between heaven and earth under the setting sun. After running for a while, Chen Lian took the initiative to slow down. Mainly because Li Dabai's posture was a bit dangerous, and Chen Lian was worried about an accident. Chen Lian looked at Li Dabai, who was lying on the horse's back with a pout, and stepped back slightly with his thighs holding the horse's belly. It was really dangerous to get too close. Li Dabai was really nervous. When he felt Chen Lian step back, he immediately moved back a little. He stopped only when he felt it was pressed against Chen Lian's body. "Chen Lian, it's dangerous to stick it too close. Friction can easily cause blood to rise, which can lead to..." At this time, the horse seemed to feel Chen Lian's discomfort, and took the initiative to stop and walk slowly on the grass, lowering its head from time to time to take a bite of fresh grass. After he stopped running, Li Dabai breathed a sigh of relief, lying on the horse and slowly regaining consciousness. Li Dabai came back to his senses and was about to sit up straight, when he moved slightly and immediately felt something strange behind him. Just when he was about to open his mouth to say something, he immediately reacted. His little face turned red and he fell down again. Chen Lian felt Li Dabai move back a little and glanced down in embarrassment. Hyun Yuan. The wind is full. Full of sex talk. Chen Lian coughed awkwardly and recited the multiplication formula silently in his mind. Li Dabai blushed and lay on the horse without daring to move. He felt as if his heart was blocked and he couldn't say anything. The hot feeling reminded her of the sound of water splashing outside the door that day. It would be nice if she could take a bath. At this time, the evening wind blew, and the pasture was bent. The sheep hidden in the grass raised their heads and glanced at the fiery sunset, then lowered their heads and continued to graze. In the quiet grassland, there was only the sound of two people breathing. It was not rapid but strangely awkward and charming. The sensitive word review was triggered for the first 3 times, and the 4th time I tried to send it out, it was too difficult for me. Fringe artists in the entertainment industry. Author, Chizu de Xiaomao. Chapter 203. Chapter 198-196. Kindness does not necessarily lead to good rewards. In the gorgeous sunset, there are already a few stars hanging in the clear sky. The spring breeze blows leisurely, and the smell of green grass mixes with the coolness brought by the snow-capped mountains in the distance. The white sheep grazed leisurely in the grassland, and the yak snorted and looked at the sunset on the horizon. Chen Lian, a tall horse, waved his riding whip gently. Li Dabai, who was sitting in front, raised his face and felt the evening breeze, enjoying this moment very much, as if he was isolated from the rest of the world. Chen Lian watched the sunset about to fall into the valley, and began to increase his speed and drive the sheep and cattle by shouting the slogans Duoji taught him. Herding is now Chen Lian's part-time job after filming. He just goes out to play, and learning how to herd will help him fit the role better. At this time, Li Dabai was able to sit firmly on the horse, leaning slightly on Chen Lian's chest. He listened to his loud shouts and watched the sheep obediently gather together under Chen Lian's driving, heading home. Direction moved slowly. While Li Dabai was immersed in the moment, Chen Lian's melodious singing suddenly came to his ears. In that faraway place, there is a good girl. When people walk past her tent, they always look back with nostalgia. I would like to wander on the grassland and herd sheep for her. I would like to be a little lamb and follow her. I would like her to take a whip and hit me lightly every day. Li Dabai felt an unspeakable emotion in her heart at this moment, and sweet panic occupied her entire heart. She turned to look at Chen Lian's bright black eyes, and she knew that she was completely in love with this man at this moment. The heartbeat in a long life is only for a moment, but it is unforgettable enough. Before nightfall completely fell, Chen Lian drove the cattle and sheep back. After jumping off the horse vigorously, he reached out to catch Li Dabai, who was about to jump off, and caught her firmly and put her on the ground. Li Dabai looked at Chen Lian's dark face and felt a primitive wildness in his body. The strong male aura made her a little obsessed. On the small building not far behind them, Mr. Zhou and Ning Jing stood in front of the balcony drinking tea and watching the scene quietly. "Aren't you angry?" Ning Jing took a sip of the butter tea and asked Mr. Zhou, who looked calm. Mr. Zhou put the cup on the railing and said nonchalantly, "There's nothing to be angry about. Just come back in the evening." Ning Jing was startled and glanced at Mr. Zhou's chest and said, "You are quite open-minded. What to do if you don't open up? It would be good if you can tighten Chen Lian's belt, but don't fantasize about locking his heart." After a while, Chen Lian ran upstairs and saw Mr. Zhou and Ning Jing drinking tea together. He also went over to pick up Mr. Zhou's teacup and took a sip. "Who made it?" "It tastes good," Chen Lian put down the cup and said. Mr. Zhou reached out and wiped the corners of Chen Lian's mouth, and said with a smile, "I followed suit. You like to make another drink for me at night?" Chen Lian nodded, not noticing that Li Dabai, who had followed him up, silently returned to his room while holding his mouth. Seeing the sweet interaction between Chen Lian and Mr. Zhou, Ningjing felt that the tea in her hand was no longer fragrant at all, so she took the cup and left. She went back and went to bed early, otherwise she would be so noisy that she couldn't sleep again. At night, Li Dabai lay in bed and stared at the ceiling silently. The scene of the afternoon would always appear in her mind. That sweet feeling is always accompanied by a hint of bitterness after the aftertaste. Li Dabai silently turned over and sighed silently in the darkness. Mr. Zhou in another room is currently competing with a pile of newspapers. In tomorrow's scene, the ingenious Schwetter can fold the newspapers into a kite, but Mr. Zhou cannot. Chen Lian looked at the scrap newspapers on the ground and said, "The prop teacher will help you fold it. You just need to learn how to do it. I think it's quite fun. Just practice." Mr. Zhou looked up at him and said with a smile, "Maybe I can make kites for my children in the future." Chen Lian suspected that young Master Zhou was targeting him, but considering that her personality didn't seem like someone who liked children, he didn't take it to heart. In the afternoon of the next day, Schwetter, dressed in red, sat on the grass beside the river on the grassland and deftly folded the newspapers brought by Jones into a kite. Gaga looked at her with admiration. But the content in the newspaper made people feel heavy. The photos of Jiangguo Company's invasion of Jinqing, burning, killing and looting were so eye-catching. "It's a typo on purpose, don't complain. Schwetter has very skillful hands and a pure mind." When she looked at the foreigners in military uniforms in the newspaper, she didn't know what the specific content was. She just wanted to make a kite for Gaga. Sanger and Jones stood aside with strings in their hands, waiting for Cher to fold the kite. Jones took the kite folded by Schwetter and greeted Gaga to take the kite and fly it together. The two of them laughed very happily. Sanger was lying on the grass and looking at the sky. Schwetter sat next to him and looked at Hua with a happy smile on his face. Sanger turned his head and looked at Schwetter's side face, with a smile on his rough face. He liked this woman, but he didn't dare to express his love. Gaga's mother passed away just a few years ago. Sanger didn't know how to tell Gaga. He didn't know if Cher would accept him or if Cher would think that he was taking advantage of her. Schwetter likes the life here, it is simple and peaceful, there is no ruthless father who wants to push her to sacrifice, everything is so pure, and there are people she likes. The eyes of Schwetter and Sanger collided slightly, and after a brief touch, they separated with shame. This kind of happy picture is particularly touching, everything is so innocent, as if it is the most beautiful thing in the world. A camera not far away recorded the scene completely. At this moment, everyone in the crew seemed to have forgotten that they were filming an anti-war movie. How could such a beautiful scene be connected with a cruel war? Feng Xiaoning soon stopped and packed up his things to prepare for the transition. Mr. Zhou and Chen Lian walked side by side and said with some melancholy, "The more beautiful something is, the more cruel it is to destroy it. I don't know how to act in the subsequent scenes." Chen Lian bit a piece of grass in his mouth. The taste of grass in his mouth was a bit astringent but also a little sweet. He looked at the snow-capped mountains in the distance and said, "Only strong contrast will make people unforgettable. That period of history itself is cruel. We just trying to recreate it on camera can't even achieve 1000% of its cruelty." The first half of the movie was innocent and beautiful, and it was shot very quickly. After the transition, Chen Lian and Ningjing had their first rivalry scene in the movie. Danzu, who was wearing a pure white dress, looked at Sanger from the horse and said, "Come hunting with me tomorrow." Danzu is the leader's daughter and is a noble lady. Sanger cannot refuse such an order. The next day Sanger came to the hunting ground, but when everyone was hunting, Sanger didn't fire a shot. Danzu looked at this taciturn man with curiosity in her heart. She knew that Sanger was a warrior, no worse than those noble sons, or even much better. "Why don't you hunt?" Sanger shook his head and looked at the shotgun in his hand and said, "I don't kill anything except wild wolves." Such words caused ridicule from those around him, and Danzu also laughed, but he did not mean to look down on Sanger, but instead recognized his character even more. It's just that her appreciation will not make Sangha tempted at all. He has Shweta in his heart. Even if Danzu is the daughter of the leader, he can't let Sangha take another look. But soon a lone wild wolf appeared on the grassland. Everyone looked at Sanger, wanting to see if his marksmanship and bravery were just words. Sanger raised his shotgun and looked at the non-threatening wild wolf without firing, and finally just watched it walk into the depths of the grassland. They don't kill only wild wolves, but now they don't even kill wild wolves that are not a threat. In Danzu's eyes, Sanger's behavior is neither cowardly nor bragging, but a kind of tolerance and kindness. After finishing this scene, Chen Lian put down the shotgun in his hand and couldn't help but think about whether Sanger's character was good or not. In the movie, the Colonel Sanger saved was a wild wolf. Although he was no threat at the time, he later brought carnage and war to the land. Chen Lian does not approve of such behavior deep down in his heart, but from the perspective of Sanger, his choice seems to be right. From the perspective of God, Chen Lian naturally believes that Sanger's kindness is stupid. Your kindness and help will not be rewarded, it will only make those enemies look down on you even more, and then raise their rifles against you. Just like Galak Chicken's help to Brother Ni's illegal immigrants, the rewards he got were simply wonderful. Blind kindness is useless. Not only the Galak Chicken, but also many places have the same ending. In the thousands of years of human history, such things have happened one after another, but everyone naively believes that their kindness will be rewarded beautifully. Kindness will be rewarded, but only if it is kindness to your friends and not to your enemies. Soon Sanger's kindness was rewarded and the colonel returned with the army. He held the Hatta to greet his friend, but the colonel on the horse looked at him and silently pointed the rifle in his hand at him, using bullets to tell Sanger that he was not a friend but an enemy. All the tribesmen who came with Sanger were shot dead by enemy bullets. Sanger looked at all this in disbelief, looked at the cruel and cold-blooded colonel on the horse, and looked at standing with the colonel, and he also collapsed. Yelled Jones. The war has begun. Kindness cannot drive away the traitors, but kindness will be exploited by the traitors. After the war scenes began, the entire crew became busy. They were no longer as peaceful as before. Everyone was working intensively in a depressed state. It seems that everyone wants to finish filming the scene quickly and cannot bear to see such a beautiful thing destroyed. Chen Lian also gradually became silent. Jones and the colonel would always hide during the filming breaks, as if they felt ashamed to see others. During the filming, Chen Lian and others looked at them with hostility and hatred in their eyes after entering the scene. Although they knew it was fake, they could not help but feel it in their hearts. The war scenes changed many scenes. When Chen Lian and Jones came to the previous temple again, the colonel and Jones were silent. In this scene, the colonel wants to tear down the murals in the temple and take them away, so as to bring such magnificent art to a more civilized society. Jones strongly opposed it, but he was a soldier and could only follow orders. He couldn't understand why he should impose his own civilization on other people's homes. After the filming of this scene, Jones took the initiative to find Chen Lian and sat in front of him and said, "War is the plunder of civilization." I thought of the cultural relics that were brought back to Western museums, and suddenly I felt very ridiculous. In your Chinese language, is it called nothing? The more you want something, the more you act shamelessly. Chen Lian looked at Jones and couldn't help but untie the wine bag with Urquatu on his waist and handed it to him and said, "Those are already history. No one can take anything away from us now, but there are still other places. Being robbed is like being trapped in a strange loop of history." Jones took a sip of wine, his face turned red due to the spiciness of Urquatu, and he was silent for a long time. The filming is still going on, and Chen Lian and Mr. Zhou are about to finish filming. Sanger and Shweta died in this war, but in the end Sanger violated his beliefs and killed. On the city wall, The two men fell in front of a powder keg filled with explosives, and the ground was covered with gasoline. The colonel came to them and wanted to persuade Sanger to surrender, but Sanger took out the lighter given to him by the colonel from his pocket while holding Schwetter, who was shot. It was time to return the enemy's gift to him. The lit lighter was thrown out by Sanger, instantly igniting a raging fire. Sanger hugged Schwetter tightly in the fire, watching the flames and explosions take away the lives of these benefactors. Quack, who had lost his father, silently led them towards the most dangerous swamp on the grassland at Joan's request. At the end of the movie, Gaga stood with her grandmother, looking at the jackal trapped in the swamp, and looking at Jones, who was pointing a gun at him. Jones looked at the young Gaga with great pain in his heart. On one side he was a comrade in arms and on the other side he was his friend. Jones struggled for a long time, put down the gun in his hand, and staggered away. The movie was finished, and everyone had smiles on their faces again, but this time the smiles were heavy, as if the cruel scenes during the day were still surrounding them. The bonfire in the yard was burning, and the blazing flames seemed like war. The sonic boom of firewood sounded from time to time, always reminding people of gunshots. The aroma of food also lost its charm at this moment. Feng Xiaoning doesn't have as many ideas as before. If there is no real shooting of the avalanche, there will be no real shooting. Compared with those subsequent scenes, an avalanche has no effect in the movie. It will not add luster to the movie and will not make the movie more interesting. The theme becomes thicker. Feng Xiaoning looked at everyone's silence, stood up and said to them, "The movie is finished, everyone should be happy, remember history, but life must go on. Come, let's drink together. Thank you to those soldiers who sacrificed in history." Feng Xiaoning's words broke the silence in the dark night. Everyone looked at him and then raised the cups in their hands. Amidst the crisp sound of the clinking of wine glasses, the atmosphere seemed to become warmer. Dorhe sat in the corner holding Gaga and sang a melodious song. Dorhe's wife smiled and brought out the mare's kumis, and then sang along with Dorhe, singing along with the girls from the Z tribe. Chen Lian looked at Urquatu with only half a bottle left in his hand and smiled, then he pulled Mr. Zhou and Li Dabai to dance around the bonfire. Ning Jing sat in the distance, watching their dancing figures, and took over Chen Lian's unfinished Urquatu. After taking a sip of wine, he also hummed softly along with Duoji and the others singing. On such a night, no one seems to care about the little love affairs between men and women. They just want to dance happily and forget the cruelty and sadness. Singing and wine, dancing and food are the theme of the night. Chen Lian took a bowl and drank a drink with everyone. With a red face, he staggered to Ning Jing and sat down. He patted her shoulder vigorously and said, "Thank you." Ning Jing was a little hurt from being slapped by Chen Lian, her hands were like iron plates, but looking at the dizzy Chen Lian, she could only sigh helplessly. Chen Lian poured himself a glass of kumis and touched the Urquatu bottle in Ning Jing's hand and said, "Here's a toast to you." "Thank you." "Thank you for what?" Ning Jing looked at Chen Lian, who was unconscious but very serious, and couldn't help but said, "I'm just helping to set up a line. I would be shameless to thank you like this." "If you really want to thank me," Ning Jing muttered in a low voice. Chen Lian put his arm around her shoulders and asked without hearing clearly, "What did you say?" "I didn't hear clearly." Ning Jing said angrily, "Nothing, just drink your wine." Oh, Chen Lian finished the wine in the bowl and poured it on the table with a clang. Ning Jing looked at the drunken and unconscious Chen Lian, then looked up at Mr. Zhou and Li Dabai who were still dancing, and murmured in a low voice, "I can sleep well tonight, Then go to bed early." Fringe artists in the entertainment industry. Author, Chizu de Xiaomao. Chapter 204. Chapter 199-197. Meaningless Con. When the first ray of sunshine in the morning passes over the top of the snow-capped mountains and shines on the earth, a faint mist rises from the moist grass. Chen Lian opened his eyes hazily and raised his hands to block the sunlight that passed through the gap in the window, and got up from the bed with some difficulty. The hangover from last night was a bit serious. Chen Lian felt some pain in his temples. He turned his head and glanced at Mr. Zhou, who was curled up in a ball and sleeping soundly. He couldn't remember how he came back last night. Chen Lian shook his head and ignored his lost memory. He lifted the quilt and got off the bed. Looking at his washed body, he was a little touched that Mr. Zhou could still wipe his body after drinking too much last night. "Good girl, I just wiped it a little too hard and felt the skin on my lower abdomen was a little burning." Chen Lian looked at Mr. Zhou, who had even forgotten to take off his clothes to go to bed, and couldn't help but walk over and kiss her forehead. After washing up, Chen Lian came to the yard. In the quiet yard, Duoji was feeding his horse fodder. When he saw Chen Lian coming out, he immediately laughed and said, "My friend, you lost again last night." Chen Lian smiled helplessly. He lost again in the drinking contest with Duoji last night. He probably had no chance of beating him. "Are you leaving today?" Duoji came over and patted Chen Lian on the shoulder and said, "I wish your movie will be successful." Chen Lian nodded and said, "Thank you for your help during this time." "You're welcome, that's right," Duoji said with some reluctance, "I still want to drink with you again." Chen Lian faced the golden sunshine and looked at the snow-capped mountains in the distance and said, "There is a chance." Before everyone on the crew got up, Chen Lian mounted Duoji's horse, took the camera and galloped towards the snow-capped mountains. The time came to around 9 o'clock, and most of the crew got up. Mr. Zhou also woke up from his deep sleep. He was a little confused when he didn't see Chen Lian. He sat on the bed in a daze for a while. "Climb up." When they were washing up outside, Mr. Zhou bumped into Ningjing again. Seeing her energetic and rosy face, he couldn't help but say, "Why did you leave early last night?" Ningjing brushed her teeth and said vaguely, "I drank too much, so I went back to sleep." "It looks like he drank too much." Mr. Zhou rubbed his temples and asked, "Did you see where Lian went?" Ba Ningjing spat out the toothpaste foam in her mouth and said, "I heard Duoji said that he went out on horseback early in the morning." "Alone," Ningjing quickly added. Mr. Zhou hummed. Of course she knew it was a person. The suspicious object, Li Dabai, was walking over sleepily holding a wash basin. When everyone had finished packing, the sound of horse hooves was heard outside the yard. The women turned their heads and looked over at the same time, and saw Chen Lian, with dew on his hair, dismounting from his horse at the door of the yard and walking in. Mr. Zhou went up to him and asked, "What did you do just now?" Chen Lian raised the camera in his hand and said, "I'm leaving right away. I'm going to go out and take notes of the scenery here. I don't know when I'll come back next time." Mr. Zhou looked at the camera in Chen Lian's hand and said with a smile, "You like it here? Okay, go say goodbye to Gaga. I just saw this little guy secretly wiping his tears." When Chen Lian heard this, he immediately turned to look for Gaga's figure. The little guy was hiding behind the door and looking at him with his little head. His eyes were red as if he had just cried. "Gaga, are you reluctant to let Dad go?" Chen Lian touched Gaga's head, still taking advantage of Duoji. Gaga pursed her lips and nodded. She took out a wolf tooth wrapped with a red string from her pocket and handed it to Chen Lian and said, "This is for you. My father gave it to me." Chen Lian took the wolf fang and felt it with Gaga's body temperature, so he smiled and said to Gaga, "Gaga, can you put it on Daddy?" Gaga raised her little hand and pinched the red rope and wrapped it around Chen Lian's wrist. A crystal teardrop fell on Chen Lian's palm, as if it weighed 1,000 pounds. Chen Lian held the tear in his palm. This was the biggest gift he had received here. When the crew left here, Chen Lian was sitting in the car still holding his hands, looking at Gaga being held by Duoji in the rear-view mirror, and couldn't help but sigh. Ningjing, who was sitting in the front, saw it and said, Children's emotions come quickly and they forget them quickly. I might forget you tomorrow. Duke Joe echoed beside him, and Chen Lian smiled bitterly and said, I'm not a child. Only then did Chen Lian suddenly realize that the joy of being a film actor does not lie in how wonderful your character is, but that you meet all kinds of people while acting, go to many places you have never been before, and experience all kinds of things. Emotions. The movie Red River Valley made Chen Lian feel the weight of history, the beauty of nature, the simplicity and innocence of people's hearts, and gain the purest friendship. After returning to the capital, Chen Lian looked at the familiar streets and his luxuriously decorated house. He was still a little unaccustomed to it for a while. He subconsciously looked out the window. There was no blue sky, no snow-capped mountains, no grassland, only sandstorms all over the sky. The sound of sand blown up by the wind and hitting the glass made Chen Lian sit on the sofa and listen to it for a long time. He was fascinated by the 8 o'clock TV series on the TV, and then gradually brought his thoughts back from the plateau. After packing his things, Mr. Zhou came out of the bedroom, looked at Chen Lian still sitting on the sofa and asked, "Why don't you take a shower?" Chen Lian, who had returned to modern society, lay down on the sofa and said lazily, "I want to take a shower with you. It hurt so much when you wiped me yesterday. You must make it up to me today. Then I'll put the water in." Mr. Zhou just turned around and walked to the bathroom when he suddenly realized something. Who wiped his body last night? Li Dabai? Makeup artist's sister Li? Could it be that it's not Ning Zheng? No wonder she ran away so early last night and her face was full of spring breeze when she woke up in the morning. Damn it, do a sneak attack. What can Chen Lian do when he's so drunk? It's really not enough of an advantage. Mr. Zhou took care of the drunk Chen Lian. Basically, he couldn't do anything when he was drunk, so she just laughed at Ning Jing in her heart and continued to fill the bathtub. I can't steal the chicken. I can't do anything, I can't say anything yet, but thank you for wiping my man's body. Playing the role of a noble lady is not something that a maid should do. Mr. Zhou gave himself some psychological comfort while letting go, and planned not to tell Chen Lian about this matter. He didn't believe that Ning Jing had the nerve to say it herself. After returning to the capital, Chen Lian rested for 2 days and immediately got busy. During the filming period on the plateau, communication difficulties accumulated and many things accumulated. Now I have to finish it one by one when I come back. In the BMW downstairs in the community, Li Dabai sat in the driver's seat and stared at the unit door in a daze. He didn't come back to his senses until Chen Lian came out. Dabai, go to the studio first, Chen Lian said to Li Dabai after getting in the car. Li Dabai looked at Chen Lian's trimmed hair and clean clothes, feeling a little uncomfortable and always recalled the time they rode together that day. Teacher Chen, you look good with long hair, why did you cut it so short? Li Dabai said while driving and looking in the rearview mirror. Chen Lian brushed his short hair and said, it's troublesome to have long hair, and it's so hot in summer. Short hair is more comfortable. I like the way your hair looks long, Li Dabai said dully. Just as Chen Lian was about to reply, his cell phone rang suddenly. The call was from Gong Li, but Li Dabai was still there, so Chen Lian didn't say much. Li Dabai looked at Chen Lian through the rearview mirror as he answered the phone and hung up the phone several times. He asked curiously, Teacher Chen, don't you have another movie to shoot? When will you start filming? Chen Lian put away the phone and said, next week in Huangshan, do you want to go this time? Go, Li Dabai immediately expressed his stance, and then asked curiously, are you going to ride a horse in your next movie? I won't ride, Chen Lian said speechlessly. Although the next movie is similar to the story of Red River Valley, it is a completely different story. There is no horse riding, but there are quite a few bathing scenes. Chen Lian thought that there were many large-scale scenes in the script, and he felt a little uncomfortable. He had just played a good and innocent man, and now he had to play a scumbag. He also had to take a shower with the heroine and play with her feet, and he had to let the heroine play with her feet. The heroine writes calligraphy on herself. No matter how you look at it, it has a bit of a perverted attribute in it. The director is a good playmaker and he grasps the word lust very well. The car quickly arrived at the studio. Chen Lian came to his senses and opened the door and said to Li Dabai, "Wait for me here. I'll get something and come back. I'll go to school later." "Okay," Li Dabai replied as he loosened his grip on the seat belt. Chen Lian came to the studio and saw that the statue that was originally placed inside was gone. He was a little worried about Jifa's unauthorized assertion. He couldn't contact him for more than a month, so why was he in such a hurry to take the work away? Originally, Chen Lian was planning to exhibit it during the Paralympic Games. Now it has been shipped to France by Jifa. I don't know if it can be sent back on time. However, Jifa wanted to take advantage of the opportunity to exhibit internationally before the start of the Paralympic Games, and then help this work gain greater fame. Jifa's operation coincided with Chen Lian's idea, but it was just an Olympics and a domestic sports meeting. Chen Lian found an invitation letter in his cabinet that director Cheng had left here after visiting. After getting the things, he rushed to Nortel without stopping. Fenjiao has been shortlisted for Cannes, director Cheng has already gone ahead of time, and Chen Lian has to rush there as soon as possible, otherwise he will miss the opening ceremony. Chen Lian himself didn't want to participate. The film had been shot for so long and had no success in Cannes, so it didn't make much sense to participate. But when he thought that Gong Li called him and asked him to go, Chen Lian had no choice but to go. After getting in the car, Chen Lian threw the invitation letter to Li Dabai and said, "Book a ticket to France the day after tomorrow and take you to see Cannes." Li Dabai stared at the invitation letter in his hand for a moment. He was stunned for a long time before he suddenly reacted. He looked back at Chen Lian, who looked unconcerned. He was a little surprised that he could participate in the Cannes Film Festival. How many people in China want to participate but have no chance to participate? How can a small assistant of mine officially participate in the film festival with an invitation letter, rather than being an ordinary tourist? Many people probably couldn't get this invitation, so Chen Lian just threw it to him. Li Dabai looked at Chen Lian with a calm expression and felt that what he was throwing was not a Cannes invitation, but a piece of useless paper. "Teacher Chen, did you come here just to give me an invitation letter? You are so kind to me." Li Dabai looked at Chen Lian with some emotion. Chen Lian looked at Li Dabai's moved expression and said, "It's just an invitation letter. What's so exciting about it? Come on, drive quickly. I have to go to school to ask for leave. I just came back and missed a class, and I have to ask for leave again." Li Qiji probably knew that his lungs would explode with anger. Li Dabai looked at the nonchalant Chen Lian and couldn't help but raise the corners of his mouth. What made him excited was not the invitation, but the fact that you left an invitation for yourself and even ran over to get it. Chen Lian didn't have much thought, and just came over to confirm the situation of the sculpture being taken away. After arriving at school, Chen Lian found Li Qiji directly without going to the classroom. However, this time, before Chen Lian said anything, Li Qiji took the initiative to approve Chen Lian's request for leave. Chen Lian was speechless. "Isn't this a different treatment? Take the initiative to give me time off when you attend Cannes. I hope you can achieve something this time, and I hope director Cheng can win the Grand Prix at Cannes this time," Li Qiji said with emotion, then looked at Chen Lian and said, "Do you think you have a chance to win the award this time?" Chen Lian took a look that there was no one else in the office, and then said to Li Qiji, "No chance, director Cheng will probably go home disappointed this time." Li Qiji, who was about to drink tea, paused, looked at Chen Lian and asked seriously, "Are you so unfavorable?" Chen Lian nodded and said, "Maybe director Cheng doesn't have much confidence." Li Qiji, "I'm so happy for nothing. If Fenjiao wants to win an award, Unless director Chen changes the script and finds someone who can suppress him, there will be no chance at all and he will have to take a one-day trip to Cannes. This time Chen Lian was already prepared for a one-day trip. After attending the premiere ceremony, he immediately returned to China to shoot Christ in Nanjing. The director has already finished location scouting, and is waiting for the crew from Xiangjiang to go directly to start filming after completing the formalities. According to Cheng Shifen, the leading female lead, Japanese actress Shizuko Toyama, has already gone to Xiangjiang to meet the director, and now only the leading actor, Chen Lian, has not gone to meet the creators of the show. If he hadn't met the director before in Xiangjiang, Chen Lian would probably have been fired from the crew. After chatting with Li Qiji for a while, Chen Lian left the office and prepared to go to the classroom to meet his classmates. However, Chen Lian came by chance. When he arrived at the classroom, there was no one in the class. He was just about to leave when he noticed Zhang Qingqing sitting in the corner of the classroom with her head down writing something. Chen Lian took the initiative to walk over to say hello and asked, "Long time no see. Are there no classes today?" Hearing the sudden sound above her head, Zhang Qingqing was startled and immediately covered what she was writing. She looked up and found that it was Chen Lian, and subconsciously put away her notebook. Chen Lian looked at Zhang Qingqing's reaction and thought she was writing a diary, so he took a step back. He didn't want to be blamed for spying on girls writing diaries. What if he was exposed by Zhang Qingqing and was fired? "You are back from filming," Zhang Qingqing said subconsciously, then remembered Chen Lian's question just now and immediately said, "There are no classes today, they all came to the classroom, Chen Zi." She went shopping. Zhang Qingqing stopped talking before Chen Zihan's name was finished, as if she didn't want to mention the name. Chen Lian looked at her and guessed whether the conflict between the two had become more and more serious recently. Chen Lian coughed and said, "Well, I just came back and I have to leave in a few days. I stopped by to see my classmates today." When Zhang Qingqing heard this, she glanced at Chen Lian and cursed in her heart that she was here to see Chen Zihan and her classmates. Chen Lian looked at Zhang Qingqing, who was silent and didn't want to talk much, so he said, "I have to leave first. I'll see you next semester." "Next semester?" Zhang Qingqing was stunned for a moment and asked subconsciously, "There are still 2 months left in this semester. You won't come?" Hearing Zhang Qingqing's question, Chen Lian explained casually, "I'm going to Cannes in 2 days. When I get back, I will join the crew for filming soon. I will probably have a vacation after finishing filming, so we can only meet next semester." After Chen Lian finished speaking, he felt a bit regretful. He had never gotten along well with his classmates. College was almost over, so he thought about it and said, "Tomorrow Saturday, I would like to invite my classmates to have a meal together. Can't you help me ask everyone's opinions?" Zhang Qingqing also had mixed feelings. She hesitated for a moment and nodded in agreement. She looked at Chen Lian and said, "I'll ask you tonight, and I'll tell you later." "Sorry, Zihan is not at school, so I'm troubling you," Chen Lian said gratefully. Zhang Qingqing, "Why bother me because Zihan is not here? Use me as a substitute. That's too much. The tsundera's brain circuit is always different from ordinary people." Zhang Qingqing looked at Chen Lian angrily, snorted, hugged her notebook and turned around to leave. After leaving the classroom, Zhang Qingqing looked at the notebook in her hand and tore up the half-written reply on the page, so she refused to agree to the senior's pursuit and continued to ignore him. "If I were with my senior, I would really be outclassed by Chen Zihan. Chen Zihan will never be allowed to be angry with him all day long. You must find someone better than Chen Lian. If it doesn't work, just take Chen Lian away. Let Chen Zihan cry bitterly alone." Zhang Qingqing, who had imagined a whole revenge drama in her mind, couldn't help but exhale and whispered, "It's great. Posted at 5:20, it means I love you, please vote for me." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fringe artists in the entertainment industry. Author, Chizuda Xiaomao. Chapter 205. Chapter 198. Teacher Chen is going to slap your palm. Growth in life goes through different stages. What people in their early 20s love most is fantasy. They fantasize about their own career, their own partner, and the fantasy that they are the special one. Chen Lian has long passed the stage of fantasy, but he definitely believes that he is the special one. There should be no more special person than him in the world. However, no matter how special a person is, they will be assimilated by the world. Chen Lian stood in Chen Myron's yard and looked at her being cared for by a nanny, full of doubts in his heart. Why are you so arrogant all of a sudden? Injured and unable to move? I didn't listen to what she said. Chen Myron was sitting on the rocking chair, eating grapes. When she saw Chen Lian coming over, she immediately wanted to sit up. As soon as her movements got a little bigger, she suddenly realized and sat up carefully. What's going on with you? Chen Lian looked at Myron confused, walked over to help her and asked, did you fall? Chen Myron, who originally wanted to confess the truth, nodded mysteriously when she heard this and winked at the nanny next to her. The well-informed nanny had long suspected that something was wrong with Chen Myron's pregnancy before she was married. If she didn't get it, she was the wife of a big shot. Now that she didn't dare to admit that she was pregnant, she became even more sure. Chen Lian didn't notice Mei Chen's little movements, helped her sit down and asked, how did you get injured? Is it serious? The waist is twisted to the waist, Chen Myron said without blushing, her thin eyebrows slightly furrowed and she looked like she was in pain. Chen Lian looked at Mei Chen's weak look and couldn't help but said, have you been to the hospital? I know a Chinese medicine doctor who is great at treating bruises and bruises. I'll take you to see him. Chen Myron immediately shook her head and said, it's not that serious. It doesn't have to be so troublesome. It will be fine in a few days. If it hadn't been for less than 3 months, Chen Myron would have really wanted to tell Chen Lian that she was pregnant right away, but in order to defeat the enemy with one blow, she decided to endure it a little longer. In the evening, Chen Lian stayed with Beauty Chen, letting her lie on the bed and gently rubbing her injured waist. Myron Chen turned her head and looked at Chen Lian and asked, honey, if I can't do it tonight, will it be uncomfortable for you? Chen Lian paused with his hand, patted Beauty Chen's buttocks angrily and said, you are injured and still want to mess around. You should take good care of yourself. Oh, Chen Myron said in a dull voice, seeming a little disappointed. Feeling Chen Lian's big hands massaging her, she felt a little itchy in her heart. Chen Lian rubbed his waist with Beauty Chen and asked, have you encountered any projects recently? I asked you to talk to Zhang Quilai before, did you go and ask? After getting down to business, Chen Myron also stopped thinking, resting her chin on the pillow and said, I asked Zhang Quilai. He does have ideas, but a company in Guangzhou is also contacting him. I am talking to him about other projects. There are also 2 projects. One is that the National Center for the Performing Arts wants to change a play into a TV series and is looking for investors, and the other project is Cao Laoxi, but the investor is Beijing Culture and Art Audio and Video Publishing House, and they are just looking for someone to cooperate. After listening, Chen Lian thought for a while and said, you can continue chatting with Zhang Quilai. The conditions can be more favorable. What is the name of the play at the National Center for the Performing Arts? Returning on a snowy night, Chen Myron added, the drama is very popular. I think I can invest in it. At least I don't have to worry about not being able to sell it after filming. Chen Lian nodded. There was no need to worry about the National Center for the Performing Arts play. The status was there, so he thought for a while and said, then let's talk about it. It can be cast. As for Cao Laoxi's play, Forget it. They are if you want to find a strong partner, you won't consider a small company like ours. Well, that's what I thought too. Chen Myron suddenly thought of something, turned to look at Chen Lian and asked, should we also start the advertising business? If we only invest in TV series, so many people in the company will be wasted. If you have the energy, just do it. Don't you plan to continue acting? Chen Lian asked, rubbing Chen Myron's waist. Chen Lian doesn't understand advertising. If TV dramas can give suggestions through some of his own memories, then advertising really has no clue. I won't act anymore. Actors are boring. Chen Myron sat up and looked at Chen Lian and said, what can an actor do to the end of his performance? It's not just working for others. If my boss doesn't do it, why should I work for others? Seeing Beauty Chen like this, Chen Lian smiled and said, then start the advertising business. I will ask someone to introduce you to some clients later. Chen Myron was immediately overjoyed. She took Chen Lian's hand and said, is it the second uncle? Your VCD is very popular now, but why is it called Leixin VCD? Does the second uncle's name have the word Xin in it? Listening to Chen Myron's words about her second uncle, Chen Lian felt as if he was married to her, but he still explained, there is no letter in the second uncle's name. It's just that he believes that doing business must be based on integrity, so he called him Leixin. It's an ugly name. Died. Myron Chen tilted her head and said, I think it's pretty good. It's catchy and easy to remember. You guys have a taste. Anyway, I don't think it sounds good. It's not technological at all. I'm going to be a technology company in the future, Chen Lian complained in disgust, and then got back to business. Second uncle knows a lot of people who are doing business. I'll let you go later. He helps to attract customers, which should be of some use, but Yangcheng is too far away from the capital, so the effect is not likely to be great. Beauty Chen didn't care at all whether she could attract customers. She rolled her eyes and said, husband, give me your second uncle's phone number. I'll contact him later. Chen Myron's calculations were very smart. If she got in touch with Jiao Linmuo, she would go to Yangcheng with a big belly in 2 months and ask her second uncle to make the decision. I don't believe that I can't defeat Chen Lian. Chen Myron's little calculation was so silent that Chen Lian didn't hear any movement and directly called her. After the two chatted for a while, they turned off the lights and went to sleep. It was extremely quiet tonight, except for the wild cats in the alley who barked tirelessly all night long. On the other side of the capital, Zhang Qingqing couldn't sleep in the dormitory, but she lay silently on her bed, thinking about a very important issue. Should he tell his classmates that Chen Lian was going to treat him to dinner, or should he take this opportunity to backstab Chen Zihan? In the darkness, Zhang Qingqing turned her head and glanced at Chen Zihan opposite. She felt extremely angry when she thought that she had called Chen Lian when she came back in the evening and was angry with her. Finally, I made up my mind that I couldn't continue to lose no matter what. Even if I couldn't win, I would die together. In the afternoon of the next day, Chen Lian received a call from Zhang Qingqing, telling him that he had agreed with his classmates and asked him the time and place of the evening gathering. Chen Lian chose a place not far from the school. It was not a high-end place, so that everyone would not have to worry about it. There were many boys in the class, so they would definitely drink. After hanging up the phone, Chen Myron looked at Chen Lian and asked, have you made an appointment with your classmates for dinner tonight? Chen Lian put away the phone and explained, well, my sophomore year is coming to an end, and I don't think I will go to school for my junior year. I just want to take this opportunity to get together. Well, then you go ahead. By the way, I will see you off when you go to France tomorrow. No, you can recuperate at home. Chen Lian first called Li Dabai and asked her to pick him up. When she arrived, he said goodbye to Chen Myron and left. At the entrance of the alley, Li Dabai watched Chen Lian coming out of a small courtyard and wondered whose yard this was. Why did Chen Lian spend the night here? Could it be that it belongs to Mr. Zhou? Just when Li Dabai was thinking wildly, Chen Lian had already opened the car door and got in. Have the tickets been booked? Chen Lian asked, closing the car door. Li Dabai immediately responded, it's booked, the flight will be at 10:30 tomorrow morning. Chen Lian nodded and said, okay, let's drive to Jingshanzhuang next to the school. We will have dinner with classmates in the evening. When you get there, go and do your own thing. Oh, do I want to pick you up tonight? Li Dabai asked, looking in the rearview mirror. Chen Lian thought for a moment and said, no, you go back and rest early in the evening. You have to catch a flight tomorrow morning, so you don't have to pick me up. Li Dabai didn't say anything after hearing this, and drove Chen Lian directly to his destination, and then drove home to pack his things. It was not yet 6 o'clock, and Chen Lian thought he would be the first to arrive. Unexpectedly, he saw Zhang Qingqing standing alone at the door of the hotel. Why did you come so early? Chen Lian walked over and looked at the young and beautiful Zhang Qingqing, and couldn't help but ask, are all the classmates here? Zhang Qingqing pursed her lips and shook her head and said, no, I came over first to see if there is anything I can help with. Then you're quite a nice person, Chen Lian said a little funny, what can I do for you when you come to the restaurant to eat? Help with ordering? Zhang Qingqing's face turned slightly red, and she looked at her toes with an unnatural expression. Seeing Zhang Qingqing like this, Chen Lian took her in without saying anything. He said he wanted to help, which was definitely an excuse. If Chen Zihan came over so actively, it was normal. But now Zhang Qingqing is here on her own, but Chen Zihan didn't come with her? This is very strange. In the spacious private room, Chen Lian poured a glass of water for Zhang Qingqing, sat on a chair and looked at her with his legs crossed to see what she wanted to do. In the quiet private room, Zhang Qingqing looked at the teacup in front of her, raised her head slightly and glanced at Chen Lian, and found that he was looking at her playfully, and she suddenly felt nervous. Could it be that he was discovered? Does he know I didn't notify anyone else? Zhang Qingqing was inexplicably panicked, and even a little afraid that Chen Lian would get angry. Although they were classmates, Zhang Qingqing knew the gap between herself and Chen Lian, so she subconsciously felt a sense of awe. Especially now when she feels guilty, it is even more obvious. If Zhang Qingqing could still maintain her arrogant personality, she is a little uneasy now. The ventilation fan in the private room was whirring slowly. Chen Lian had finished drinking the cold drink in his hand, and Zhang Qingqing still hadn't prepared her emotions. As time passed by, Chen Lian took the first look at the time and said, it's almost 6:30. They should be arriving soon. After saying this, Chen Lian looked at Zhang Qingqing and waited for her to speak. He couldn't really come here in advance to be in a daze. They won't come, so I didn't notify them. Zhang Qingqing suddenly raised her head and looked at Chen Lian and said. The private room became even quieter, and the air seemed to be solid. Zhang Qingqing felt a little uneasy when she looked at the silent Chen Lian. Chen Lian narrowed his eyes slightly, looked at Zhang Qingqing and asked, then you have something to talk to me about alone? Yes. I like you. It was obviously me first. Zhang Qingqing didn't hide it at this time, and spoke out all the frustrations she felt during this period. Chen Li listened quietly and felt a little ridiculous. Looking at Zhang Qingqing's red eyes, he really couldn't understand why she had so many strange grievances. The key is that if you feel wronged, why should you go to Chen Zihan to have a quarrel or a fight? Why are you talking to yourself? When Zhang Qingqing finished speaking, Chen Lian leaned back in his chair and frowned and said, this is a matter between you and Chen Zihan. It has nothing to do with me, and whether I'm with her or not, it's all with her. It doesn't matter to you, right? You can't be interested in me and I can't be with other people, right? It doesn't make sense. Zhang Qingqing took a deep breath and said, it doesn't make sense, but Chen Zihan is my best friend in school. She knew I liked you, but she betrayed me. She deliberately came to laugh at my arrogance. Chen Lian couldn't help but smacked his lips. Looking at Zhang Qingqing, who was extremely angry, he finally understood what she was thinking. Is this because of love and hatred? But do you hate yourself or Chen Zihan? Then what do you mean by looking for me? Do you want me to sever the relationship with Chen Zihan? Or do you want me to tell Chen Zihan that I won't target you in the future? Chen Lian couldn't help laughing as he spoke, looked at Zhang Qingqing and said, I really don't want to. I understand what you mean. Zhang Qingqing took a deep breath and said, I don't have any other intention, I just have been holding it in my heart for a long time. No matter what your attitude is towards me, I just want to say these things out. That's it. Chen Lian looked at Zhang Qingqing and said seriously, if that's the case, then I know now. If there is nothing else, I will leave. Chen Lian said as he stood up and was about to leave, but as soon as he turned around, Zhang Qingqing grabbed his hand. You don't like Chen Zihan, right? I know you don't like her, why are you with her? You're just playing. Chen Lian turned around and took out his hand and said, whether I like her or not is my business. There is no need to tell you. You are really a bit neurotic like this. I'm just not willing to give in. Why should I lose to Chen Zihan? Why am I not better than her? Why can she laugh at me? Looking at the somewhat nervous Zhang Qingqing, Chen Lian fumbled in his pocket for a long time, took out a piece of chewing gum and threw it into his mouth and said, actually, you are right, I don't like Chen Zihan very much, but you lose because you are too arrogant. I will not pursue you or coax you like those suitors in school who like you. At this point, Chen Lian paused and said, besides, I don't like you either. I just have a crush on you. Why should I spend time and energy pursuing you? Hearing Chen Lian's words, Zhang Qingqing seemed to understand something. She was a proud person, but Chen Lian was 10 times more proud than herself. If two proud people would not take the initiative, there would be no results, so only then would Chen Zihan be given that opportunity to take advantage of. Zhang Qingqing took a deep breath. That's all for today. All her pride and self-esteem have been torn away by her own hands. What else can't be lost? No matter what, I must teach Chen Zihan a lesson. Otherwise, I won't be able to swallow this breath. You tried so hard to steal the person I like, why can't I take it back? Looking at Zhang Qingqing's expression, Chen Lian seemed to have guessed what she wanted to do, and said directly, don't go up, so as not to lose your breath. Chen Lian was sure that as long as he raised his finger, Zhang Qingqing would follow him home obediently, just to compete with Chen Zihan for no other reason. Seeing Chen Lian about to leave, Zhang Qingqing suddenly grabbed his hand and said, I'm not doing it to compete with Chen Zihan, I'm doing it for myself. I said I like you, and I've revealed the most miserable side of myself. Show it to you. Chen Lian couldn't help but mutter in his heart, you really can't act. It's not about competing with Chen Zihan. Could it be true love? What's the difference between doing this and delivering food? And where is the so-called unbearable and embarrassed situation? The little girl is still naive and does not know how terrible teacher Chen is. But seeing Zhang Qingqing like this, Chen Lian was too lazy to be pretentious, and pushed Zhang Qingqing into the corner with a bang, looked into her eyes and said, I'll give you another chance to reorganize your language, otherwise you won't have the chance to regret it. Looking at Chen Lian, who was suddenly oppressed, Zhang Qingqing's heartbeat skipped a beat. Staring at his burning eyes, Zhang Qingqing felt as if she was facing a majestic father or teacher when she was a child. Zhang Qingqing couldn't help but swallowed, looked into Chen Lian's eyes, and mustered up the courage to nod again. She didn't know why she actually liked the feeling of being forced to look down on. Seeing Zhang Qingqing nodding, Chen Lian took back Bidong's hand, pulled up a chair and sat down. Looking at Zhang Qingqing, who was like a little white rabbit, he couldn't help but shake his wrist. The unknown attributes deep in his heart were inexplicable. awakened. Chen Lian raised his legs and looked at Jiang Qingqing, who was weak and stubborn at the same time. He raised his chin slightly and raised his fingers at her. Jiang Qingqing walked cautiously in front of Chen Lian, looking into his eyes not knowing what he wanted to do. Chen Lian looked at Jiang Qingqing and said, "Stretch out your hand." Jiang Qingqing was a little confused, but she still obediently stretched out her white and tender hands and placed them in front of Chen Lian. Snapped. Chen Lian picked up the chopsticks on the table and lightly slapped Jiang Qingqing's palm. It was neither light nor severe, but there was obvious pain. Jiang Qingqing was in pain and just about to take back her hand, she heard Chen Lian's slightly majestic voice. "Don't move." Jiang Qingqing subconsciously did not dare to move, as if Chen Lian's voice had a magical power. Snapped. Jiang Qingqing felt her palm being slapped again. It hurt, but there was a strange feeling rising in her heart. Why does it feel so strange to be slapped on the palm? Jiang Qingqing wondered if she was sick. But the next second Jiang Qingqing felt her palm being held, very gentle and warm. Chen Lian held Jiang Qingqing's hand, gently pulled her into his arms and lay on his lap. Just when Jiang Qingqing was surprised, the thin chopstick fell down again. It's just that the position is a little different this time. It still hurts a little, but it's not as resistant as it was at the beginning. Jiang Qingqing's face turned red and she bit her lips. She raised her head and looked into Chen Lian's eyes, as if she had been frozen. Finally, she lowered her head again under Chen Lian's gaze. Fringe artists in the entertainment industry. Author, Chizu de Xiaomao. Chapter 206. Chapter 201-199. Teacher Chen, why are you so proactive? There was a bit of cold wind on the streets at night, and under the dim street lights, two oblique shadows were stretched very long. Jiang Qingqing held down the hem of her skirt and followed behind Chen Lian. She turned her head and glanced around from time to time as if she was nervous. At this time, she completely lost her previous arrogant look. Chen Lian walked in front with his hands in his pockets. He glanced back at Jiang Qingqing and raised his handsome eyebrows slightly. Jiang Qingqing immediately followed him at a trot. After arriving at Chen Lian, Jiang Qingqing whispered, "Can you give that back to me?" Chen Lian put his hands in his pockets, rubbed the silky fabric with his fingers and asked, "What should I give you back? What should you call me?" "The Lord is." Jiang Qingqing hesitated for a long time but was still embarrassed to say those two words, so she had to lower her head and lean against Chen Lian to block the cold wind blowing behind her. The wind was very bleak tonight, and Chen Lian also felt a little cold. There was something that seemed inappropriate to do tonight, and he had to go to France tomorrow. After thinking about it for a long time, Chen Lian decided to give up temporarily and wait until he came back to continue slowly. "I'll take you back to school. I have to go to France tomorrow." "It's too late now." Chen Lian looked at the nervous Jiang Qingqing and said. Hearing Chen Lian's words, Jiang Qingqing breathed a sigh of relief, but deep down she felt a little disappointed. It was as if she was talking about going to see aliens, but halfway through she suddenly stopped talking. It's enough to arouse curiosity, but it can't satisfy it. If you think about it, you won't be disappointed. The hotel was not far from the school. Chen Lian and Jiang Qingqing walked slowly to the school gate. At this time, the school gate was not closed yet, and many students were returning to school one after another. Arriving in a familiar environment, Jiang Qingqing became visibly nervous. She pressed her skirt with both hands, like a panicked little rabbit. Especially when several freshman students greeted her, Jiang Qingqing felt like her heart was about to jump out of her chest. Chen Lian looked at her nervous look and raised his hand to touch her little head to give her some sense of security. When Jiang Qingqing saw Chen Lian raise his hand, she subconsciously stretched out her palm. If it wasn't at the school gate, she might have turned her back. Seeing that Jiang Qingqing might have misunderstood, Chen Lian didn't explain. He briefly fulfilled her wish, then touched her little head and said, "Go back and get some rest early." Jiang Qingqing felt Chen Lian's warm palm and was a little obsessed with his hard-won tenderness at this moment. She raised her head and looked at his face with some expectation in her eyes. "Not tonight, go back and sleep well and be obedient," Chen Lian said in a low voice. Jiang Qingqing lowered her head and said "Oh," then turned and walked towards the school, but she always looked back at Chen Lian. After Jiang Qingqing walked into the school, Chen Lian turned around and left. Walking on the quiet campus, Jiang Qingqing could no longer see Chen Lian, and the only sense of security in her heart disappeared instantly. She pinched the corners of her skirt with both hands, wanting to run back to the dormitory quickly, but she didn't dare, so she could only do so cautiously. Observe the surroundings and walk towards the dormitory. After returning to the dormitory, Jiang Qingqing breathed a sigh of relief when she saw that her roommates were already asleep. She quietly went to the closet to get some clothes. Just as she was about to go to bed, she stopped and blushed and went to the table to get some paper. Why is this so? After working secretly for a few minutes, Jiang Qingqing regained her sense of security and looked at the dark ceiling, wondering how things could develop like this. What's going on with that feeling of resistance and fascination? Am I a pervert? Jiang Qingqing was startled by her thoughts, but the wet feel of the tissue in her palm told her that she seemed to be really sick. But when she saw Chen Zihan sleeping opposite her from the corner of her eye, the arrogance that had disappeared in her heart came back. She snorted softly, turned around, wrapped herself in a quilt, closed her eyes and went to sleep. You are just a master, how can you say you are used to it? Sleep, sleep. After all, you are the most special one. Just wait, Chen Lian will never talk to you again next time. When Chen Lian returned home and looked at the small black gift in his hand, he felt that life was always full of surprises, and strange things would always happen in corners that you didn't know about. The night passed quickly. In the clear blue sky, a plane left a straight mark in the sky and flew towards the other side of the earth. Chen Lian sat in the small seat, looking at the apologetic Li Dabai, and wanted to say something to her, but he held it back, blaming himself for not explaining clearly. However, sitting in economy class was very uncomfortable. After a journey of more than 10 hours, Chen Lian felt that he might not be able to sleep well. Upgrade. Must upgrade. Chen Lian called the flight attendant to ask if he could be upgraded. The flight attendant politely replied, "There are currently no seats in first class, but there are still 2 seats in business class." "Why are there so many people on this flight?" Chen Lian asked a little strangely. The flight attendant smiled and said, "Because the Cannes Film Festival is about to start." Chen Lian suddenly realized, then turned to look at Li Dabai and said, "Change to business class. Don't save me money next time, don't book economy class again." Li Dabai felt that he had neglected his duty and let out a dull sigh. However, the 2 seats in the business class were not together. Chen Lian and Li Dabai were seated separately. Chen Lian looked at the timid Li Dabai and walked towards his seat to ask the person next to him if he could change seats. However, after Chen Lian walked to his seat and looked at the person in charge, he took off his sunglasses in surprise and checked carefully to make sure he had identified the right person. Long time no see. After Chen Lian sat down, he looked at Lu Xiaoli, who was looking out the window. Hearing someone saying hello next to her, Lu Xiaoli turned her head in surprise. She didn't expect to meet an acquaintance, let alone Chen Lian. Right? Chen Lian. Lu Xiaoli looked at Chen Lian in surprise and joy and said, "What a coincidence, I didn't expect to meet you here." Chen Lian smiled and said, "It's indeed a coincidence. The last time was more than a year ago." Hearing Chen Lian's words, Lu Xiaoli was also in a trance. Time passed so fast. In the blink of an eye, more than a year had passed. Time flies so fast, but what a coincidence, I feel like I will meet you every time I come to the capital. Lu Xiaoli couldn't help but smile. Chen Lian looked at the scenery outside the window and said, "Now we are no longer in the capital." Lu Xiaoli subconsciously turned her head and glanced, and found that she had indeed flown out of the capital. Looking at the capital getting farther and farther away from her, she turned back to look at Chen Lian and said, "We were still above the capital just now, so it doesn't matter." Haha, that's true. On the other side of the business class, Li Dabai was still waiting for Chen Lian to change seats. He suddenly heard Chen Lian's laughter and immediately turned his head to look over and found that he was talking to a woman next to him. He was stunned. "Do you want it to be so fast? How many minutes has it been? Do you just talk and laugh with others? Did you forget what you were going for? Teacher Chen is really, forget it, I can't bear to scold him, and he can't bear to scold me." Li Dabai sighed, stood up and walked carefully across to Chen Lian. Looking at Li Dabai who came in front of him, Chen Lian remembered that he wanted to change seats, but now that he met an acquaintance, he was embarrassed to speak, so he said to Li Dabai, "When you meet an old friend, you won't change seats are up." Li Dabai glanced at Lu Xiaoli, pursed his lips and said, turned around and left. The assistant has no rights and will definitely not make the same mistake next time when booking a flight. Looking at Li Dabai's back, Chen Lian explained to Lu Xiaoli, "My assistant, who has no experience in booking an economy class ticket, has just been upgraded, so I want to change seats." Lu Xiaoli said, "Oh," she just thought Li Dabai was Chen Lian's girlfriend, and she was a little surprised why they didn't sit together. However, Lu Xiaoli did not expect that the little man she met more than a year ago now had an assistant, so she asked curiously, "What are you doing now? Are you still acting and painting?" Lu Xiaoli has now remembered about Chen Lian and whether he is an artist or an actor. There was some noise in the cabin. Chen Lian moved slightly towards Lu Xiaoli and said, "Yes, what about you, are you still dancing? Are you going to France this time for a performance or a tour?" Hearing Chen Lian's words, Lu Xiaoli was silent for a while, and then said after a long time, "I don't dance anymore. The last performance in Beijing was my last performance. This time I will go to France. Forget it, there is nothing to say." Lu Xiaoli didn't want to say that she was seeking a divorce from her ex-husband. It was miserable enough that her career had failed, and her marriage had also failed. The loser in life was probably herself. "Fortunately, I am not a failed mother, and I must not be a failed mother, otherwise my life will be such a failure." Lu Xiaoli's melancholy was filled with deep sadness. Chen Lian, who was sitting next to her, could clearly feel it and guess what she had not finished saying. "Are you going to France this time to go through divorce procedures? What was her ex-husband doing in France?" Chen Lian couldn't remember it, and he had never paid attention to these gossips before. The background of the characters has been modified to a certain extent. It is an emergency avoidance and should not be related to reality. Lu Xiaoli felt melancholy for a moment, then looked at Chen Lian with a smile and asked, "What about you? Why are you going to France? Is this your first time here too?" "I came to attend the Cannes Film Festival this time. I had held an art exhibition in Paris before." Chen Lian explained briefly, without continuing the previous topic, casually mentioned some interesting things about Paris and started chatting with her. Maybe it was because the topic Chen Lian talked about was very light-hearted, or maybe it was because she was facing a strange acquaintance that Lu Xiaoli rarely let down her guard, chatting with Chen Lian for a long time and talking about a lot of her own things. He said that he was not supported in dancing, that his family did not understand and disrespect him, that his daughter was beautiful and obedient, that he was sorry for her and that he would give her the best life in the future. Chen Lian saw a motherly look in Lu Xiaoli, and suddenly thought of Gong Li in his mind. Will she be like Lu Xiaoli in the future? After I became a mother, I realized that the most important thing in the world is my child, and nothing else is important. Lu Xiaoli ended the conversation with a mother's tone, leaning on her seat and turning to look at Chen Lian said, "You will understand when you become a father in the future." After talking for so long, I will take a nap. Chen Lian nodded and took out the eye mask he carried with him from his pocket, closed his eyes and prepared to rest for a while. He still had several hours to go before arriving in France. Li Dabai, who was sitting a few seats in front of Chen Lian and the others, looked back at the two people who were motionless, took out the same eye mask that Chen Lian gave her, put it on and fell asleep. That woman is already married and has children, so there is no need to worry. You can let your guard down. It's really hard to be an assistant. You have to guard against all kinds of women. It's just too difficult. Chen Lian's assistant is naturally not that easy to be, this guy has a lot of troubles. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon Paris time, the plane landed. After Chen Lian got off the plane, he turned to look at Lu Xiaoli who came out with him and asked, "Do you have a lot of luggage? Do you need help?" Lu Xiaoli shook her head and said, "No need, I didn't bring any luggage. I'll go back soon this time." "Then I wish you good luck." After Chen Lian finished speaking, he felt that this sentence was a bit strange, and wished him a smooth divorce. It is a popular saying in China that they would rather tear down 10 temples than break up one marriage. During this period, Lu Xiaoli basically heard people advising her not to be impulsive and to think more carefully. This was the first time she heard someone wish her well. So he looked at Chen Lian with a smile and said, "You are the first to wish me good luck. If I didn't have time, I should treat you to dinner to express my gratitude." Chen Lian felt like he had heard Lu Xiaoli say this once before. The last time he was in the capital, he said he owed a meal. But he also knew that Lu Xiaoli had something serious to do this time, so he smiled and said, "If you regret it in the future, just don't think about it and just blame me today." Lu Xiaoli shook her head and didn't explain anything. She just waved at Chen Lian and left. Chen Lian looked at her back and sincerely hoped that she would go well. Marriage is a tomb, why would everyone go in and lie down? "Teacher Chen, stop looking. Everyone has left. It's time for us to get our luggage." Li Dabai looked at Chen Lian and complained. Chen Lian turned his head and rolled his eyes at Li Dabai, put on his sunglasses and said, "Have you contacted your boss? Has he sent a car to pick us up?" The boss here was talking about Jifa, and Li Dabai immediately replied, "It has been arranged." The boss also said that she will be back from the United States in 2 days, and she is exhibiting your works. Chen Lian nodded. The Paralympic Games were held in the United States, and Jifa went to the United States with his sculptures. There are many modern art museums in the United States. Jifa arranged a month-long tour exhibition with the purpose of making this work popular. Coupled with Chen Lian's previous fame, this work is likely to make a lot of money. However, Chen Lian did not plan to make money. If this work was sold, Chen Lian planned to donate it all. Changing equipment for disabled athletes will at least add an extra piece of meat to their meals. Chen Lian does not have the ability or ambition to help the world, and will only do some good deeds within his own abilities. After picking up his luggage and going to the pickup gate of the airport, Chen Lian saw the sign with his name written on it. It should be the driver arranged by Jifa to pick him up. After Chen Lian got into the car, the driver started driving, but he was stopped by Chen Lian just a few meters away. On the roadside outside the car window, Lu Xiaoli was carrying a suitcase and looking around among the crowd. Chen Lian rolled down the window, looked at Lu Xiaoli and shouted, "Do you need help?" Hearing the familiar Chinese language, Lu Xiaoli immediately turned around, thinking it was the person arranged by her ex-husband, but when she turned around, she noticed that it was Chen Lian. Although Lu Xiaoli was disappointed, she happily came over and said to Chen Lian, "I need help. Many people here don't speak English, and I didn't see my ex-husband coming to pick me up." "No one comes to pick you up?" Chen Lian frowned. "This is a bit unreasonable. Although he came to get a divorce from you, isn't it true that he left his wife alone at the airport without divorce?" Chen Lian pushed the car, sat inside, and waved to Lu Xiaoli, I'll take you where you want to go. Among the bustling crowd, Lu Xiaoli hesitated a little before getting in the car. At least she had a certain understanding of Chen Lian, which was much better than taking a taxi by herself. After Lu Xiaoli got in the car, she smiled gratefully at Chen Lian, and then asked, "Isn't it going to delay your business?" "No delay, I have nothing to do, and Paris is not big, so it won't waste much time," Chen Lian explained with a smile. Li Dabai, who was sitting next to Chen Lian, murmured in a low voice, "Teacher Chen, you also made an appointment with Sophie Marceau. Don't forget, the advertisement is about to be updated. Do you have anything important to do?" Lu Xiaoli was a little embarrassed, her palm already on the door handle. "But did I hear it correctly just now, Sophie Marceau? Advertisement update? The advertisement Chen Lian is talking about is not the Leixin VCD that is played on CCTV every day, right?" Chen Lian turned to look at Li Dabai speechlessly, then smiled awkwardly at Lu Xiaoli and said, "Don't listen to her nonsense. I'm not in a hurry. The appointment time is in the evening." Lu Xiaoli was embarrassed. What Li Dabai just said was very direct, and it was directly aimed at herself. So I found a topic and asked, "You can shoot commercials with Sophie Marceau now?" I didn't expect it at all. I didn't take the pictures. Chen Lian shook his head and said, "We are in a company with my family, and I will be responsible for this aspect." Leixin VCD, Lu Xiaoli looked at Chen Lian in surprise. Isn't this guy an artist and actor? How could he become the boss of a big company? VCD has become very popular this year, especially with the support of Andy Lau and Sophie Marceau. Leixin VCD has become a well-known brand. Lu Xiaoli felt a little strange when she thought about the VCD she bought 2 months ago. But she immediately realized something. What kind of identity does Chen Lian have? He seems to be quite powerful. Artists have status, actors are famous, businessmen make money and are handsome and young. This is too high quality. Lu Xiaoli looked at Chen Lian with a slightly different look. She rested her palms on the leather seats and looked at the luxuriously equipped Mercedes-Benz. Suddenly I feel why the gap between people is so big. When I got off the plane, my stingy ex-husband let me down, but he was picked up and dropped off by a luxury car. Lu Xiaoli hesitated for a moment and then said, "When will you return to the capital? I want to treat you to a meal to thank you. I still owe you 2 meals. Haha, I remember it." Chen Lian laughed and said, "But I may not have time later, so I will remember these 2 meals first. If I run out of money to eat, I will come to you." Lu Xiaoli couldn't help but smile, looked at Chen Lian and said, "Then I hope I never have this opportunity. It seems that I can only let you treat me to dinner in the future. How about tomorrow?" Li Dabai, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly turned his head to look at Chen Lian. "Why is Teacher Chen so proactive? There's something wrong with you. This woman is a bit dangerous."